Welcome to the Committee of the Whole of June 9th, 2025. I acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Siano and Sauk First Nations. The District of Metchosin is committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and we recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous peoples past, present, and future. Please turn off your cell phones in the council chambers this evening so that we don't have any interference or interruptions. Committee, we have an agenda before you. There are a couple of additions. We have several pinks that we'll acknowledge later, as well in under the presentations. We'll have 2B. Metchosin Equestrian Society will be doing a presentation this evening. Is there any other changes? If not, I seek a motion to approve. Motion to approve by Councillor Shukin and seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Page 5, we have Mr. Derek Powell here to do a presentation with the South Island Farmers Institute. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So before we get started, I'll just tell you a bit about who I am. My name is Derek Powell. I farm in North Saanich, and I grow garlic there. I grow about 200 different types of garlic with West Coast garlic. That's my business. And I'm a part of the South Island Farmers Institute, which I'm here to tell you guys about tonight. I'm the vice president. We've been operating for 18 months, and we're rolling right through with our plans, and we'd like to tell you a bit about that. Let's see if this works. There we go. So we are a membership-driven Farmers Institute that represents a dynamic group of growers, producers, and agricultural supporters. We're a local institute founded and governed by farmers, for farmers, and community members. Back. There we are. So our organization is quite diverse, and we represent many different sectors of the agricultural producers. We are always looking for more members and are open to all areas of agriculture in the South Island. Also, our membership consists of all scales of agriculture. For me, I'm farming on 5 acres, and we go all the way down to a ½ acre and have members all the way up to 100 acres plus. We also welcome organizations, eaters, landowners, and local businesses as part of our membership. So what we do is we try and promote farming in the region through education, innovation, research, and collaboration. Along with that comes a lot of networking and bringing people together. We were first incorporated with the support of PAC and continue to thrive with the support of many different community partners and municipalities, including Metchosin. In the first 18 months, we were very busy. In this short time, we have organized and executed 24 learning events for our membership, and they've all been very well attended, and everyone's asking for more. Some of what we're doing, one of the facets is the Sustainer Series. In this, for 6 months of the year, once a month, we welcome and celebrate and showcase a sustaining farmer and address topics of regional concern. We find that learning from folk who've been farming in the South Island for some time proves to be very valuable learning and experience for all of us. Next up is the Innovation Series, and this one's probably my personal favorite. We like to take summer field trips and go and visit all kinds of farming activity to learn from their ambitions and their goals. These tours are hubs for networking and idea sharing. They're also very well attended and very, very keen when we're at these different places. This was one that we did at Applied Bionomics in North Saanich and learned a lot about pest management. The business series focuses on everything that comes along with being a farmer. It's not just out in the field. We're accountants and we're bookkeepers as well. So this covers those areas, but home to a farmer's unique sort of interests. And these are all put on by farmers or professionals who can help us in that area. Farmer to Farmer is a full week conference held for farmers on Vancouver Island. We like to call it winter school. Farmer to Farmer brings together food producers, growers of all sorts, and the greater community to participate in education, capacity building, and community building. Farmer to Farmer has come to be known by island farmers as a very practical and worthwhile regional event. As we lead up to the conference day, we have field days which bookend that conference. And on these field days, we do lots of other trips to other farms where we take most people from the conference itself to learn about all different types of things happening on the farms around us. Many things that all of us don't get a chance to think about or learn about on our own as we endeavor in our own operations. And the conference itself is a full day immersion into hands-on workshops, presentations, and panels, and addressing the needs of our local farmers. Along with having a lot of fun, the conference is a day of knowledge building, sharing, networking, and collaboration. Ways that we can support that. Metchosin is already supporting us with the grant and aid funding, and we very much thank that and are honored to put that to good use. We look for any great education and services opportunities for our membership. That is all I have to present to you guys today. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And if you would like to reach out at any point, we're happy to chat. And we're always looking for new members as well.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Powell? Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering, has Central Saanich or North Saanich Municipality sent the South Island farmers anything for their perusal or for comment?
You mean the council? You mean sending it with me?
To the South Island Farmers Institute. Has the council reached out for comment on any of the initiatives that they're doing?
I'm pretty sure they have, but I'm not aware of that myself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Shukin.
So through you, Councillor Donaldson. And thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Powell, and especially your involvement in a group like this. It sounds very worthwhile, especially connecting, helping people learn and grow and all that. So I have two questions for you, 2.5 sort of. So there's a lot of Skookum garlic growers in Metchosin, I should mention. But I wanted to ask you, how's business? But more broadly, how do you see business going for your members? How are you guys doing economically? So
I think this year can be can show that it's very good for most farmers that I know and I'm chatting with. Definitely. In the COVID times, there was great years and then it slowed a little bit and now it's come back up. I'd say there's more support locally and I feel great about where my business is going also. Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, I have a question. First, I want to thank you for your presentation. This council has, and previous councils have, supported farmers. In the last year, we actually had a farm tour in Metchosin with the Association Vancouver Island Coastal Communities Convention, and this year UBCM is another convention that's coming to Victoria, and there will be an agricultural tour. I haven't heard anything more other than it might be out on the Peninsula this next time, so that'll be exciting. This council also put together, and I noticed on your slide about the goose situation with farmers, and so we put together a resolution that got endorsed at the AVIC. It's going up to UBCM in September, so we'll be able to speak to that. I'll speak to it because I'm presenting it. So those are really exciting initiatives that we are engaged in or have been engaged in. I do have a question though for yourself. How does the South Vancouver Island Farmers Institute contribute to the protection of ALR lands, and what mechanisms can be used to educate small rural communities about the importance and long-term value of preserving these lands?
Directly, we don't engage like in a direct way.
Mm-hmm.
We are obviously very much in support of it, and are there to facilitate for any of our members in any kind of way we can. Having only been around for 18 months, we haven't had that come up as a focal point yet, but we know it's a big issue for all of us. I myself am a leasing farmer, so I'm always I'm very aware that my land can go at any moment, and keeping things in ALR is something we all support.
Last year, I believe the Institute put on a illegal dumping in ALR lands that several of us had attended at Saanich Fairgrounds. Do you foresee that perhaps in the next Farmer to Farmers conference and the week-long courses and such that go on, that this could be something that could be highlighted as one of the breakout sessions?
I don't know the list off the top of my head of what we have planned, but we already have all of our sessions booked for this coming conference. If it's not on there this year, it can easily go on to the next one.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have for questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
So next on our agenda, we have another presentation. This is from the Metchosin Equestrian Society, and Anna Whiten will be giving us a presentation regarding temporary stalls proposal.
Thank you. I'm not nearly as tall or accustomed to technology, apparently. So hello, I'm Anna Whiten. I'm with the Metchosin Equestrian Society. I'm the current vice president. I have been the vice president of the society for the last 2 years now. Prior to that, I was a member at large, and then previous to that, I was just an avid participant and volunteer with the group. What I'm presenting today is a brief presentation on the temporary stalls, why we need them, and what they would add to the community, as well as the issues that we currently have with moving forward. So currently we have hitching posts. This is how we house animals during events. Obviously, it requires a lot of one-on-one human interaction with our equine partners while this is happening. It is not friendly for those riders that have disabilities. It is not friendly for coaches that are bringing in large amounts of horses, i.e. like 8 horses for some of the Souk Saddle Club ran events, or the dressage testing days that are done through mainstream equestrian currently. As you can see as well, it's a very busy area because the hitching posts are also in our parking and meeting spots. So these pictures were taken from Metchosin Day last year, and you can tell that it's kind of an unsafe situation with the horses, humans, and traffic all in the same spot. What we are proposing is an aid to help with the current situation. In yellow is the grandstand, or sorry, the proposed footprint for the temporary stalls. Temporary stalls themselves are 10 by 10, and we have purchased 6 of them. Why we have chosen this spot as our area to place them is because of its location next to the arena. The fact that it's outside of our current parking area is already kind of protected with the concrete barriers. It's close to water, which is housed at the grandstands, and it will not impact any of the other features that we have in our small grassy area. This is kind of what they'll look like if we went with the tarp roof. So you can see that the horses can look out. They have fresh air that comes into them. It's not very large of a structure. It's just a temporary metal panel with plywood that keeps the horses safe and contained. The drawback to the tarp, of course, we'll probably experience as soon as we get our first gust of wind. This is what the option would look like with a metal roof. What we're envisioning in particular is something very similar to what the farmers market has. Try to match that visually. So the tarp roof, pros, least expensive, quickest to install, can be replaced or added onto in the future. So if we have a need to add an additional 2 stalls, we can quite easily in this kind of method. Bad news, it's going to be ripped apart by the wind in probably a few seasons, if not less, and it is not fire smart materials. Metal roof, of course, it would be the most visually consistent with the rest of the buildings that we have in the area, and it would last. So the stalls we have actually already purchased. We found a really good deal. Thunderbird Show Park offered us some of their used materials at pennies on the dollar, and we could not refuse or pass it up. It's been a project that we've been wanting to do for a long period of time. Previous other presidents within the Metchosin Equestrian Society have attempted to do this for quite some time, and finally we were able to find a way to do it, so we did it. So the big issue here is safety. We really want to use the stalls to make housing animals safer, and we want it to enhance our events, things like bodywork clinics, first aid courses, emergency preparedness courses that we've hosted in the past require a place to put the horse. We haven't been able to put or to use our own facilities because we don't have a place to put a horse while we're actually participating in a classroom setting or in a lecture. We cannot safely house horses in the arena loose. It is, for many reasons, a terrible idea, and we don't allow free lunging in the space as is. In the event of an emergency, say somebody's barn floods, fires, their fencing gets knocked down because of a car accident or a downed tree, we have a place that we can safely put an animal, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a horse. This could be used for any of the livestock that would be contained in it. More importantly as well, this can be used for livestock or horses that are not halter trained or are less handled. A lot of the horses that we use at our events have to be safe to be tied to a trailer or tied to the hitching rail. This would allow for a greener horse or a baby horse to be safely given a time and a space to exist without endangering themselves or others. So for insurance, we have contacted our insurance agency, Councillor, and we are covered to have have stalls available for housing animals in our facility. So already we have the insurance that would cover this use. This is an example of our waiver and the insurance requirements that are included in it. On it is also the waiver that is part of the District of Metchosin's requirements, and we would not have to change anything. So if we did have it up and going, our existing membership could use it right away. just an example of what the stall use agreement would be for an event. In the event of an actual emergency, of course, this would not be applicable. This would be part of the district's ownership. This is just an example of what type of information would be incorporated into it. So this is the big reason why we want to do this. In the past 2 years, we've been conducting emergency preparedness training in conjunction with the fire chief and our fire department. We have come to the brutal realization that we are not prepared. The current thought process of housing animals in the arena is not acceptable, nor is it practical or reasonable for so many reasons. If we needed to put several horses in there, chances are you're going to have several thousands of dollars worth of vet bills and possibly several hours spent retrieving said horses from the community once they break out. Again, not all emergencies are the big one. It's not going to be an apocalyptic nightmare kind of scenario. It's going to be something as significant as a atmospheric river where somebody's barn cannot safely house their animals and they need a place to put a few. So what we have been doing is increasing our community involvement and putting together more and more educational outreach programs that are available to everybody on the island, particularly within our community. Our emergency preparedness courses and seminars, we just hosted one. It was completely free and it was not required to be an MES member to attend. What we want to do is we want to help. The big issue right now is that there are no other places to house animals within the vicinity. Lexington Fairgrounds is no longer available. High Point up in Duncan, which last year offered a sanctuary for horses when the fire near Souk was happening, they can no longer house animals. They're no longer accepting, nor are their facilities maintained enough to securely and safely house them. The closest facilities that are available right now are the Saanich Fairgrounds and the Cowichan Fairgrounds. Those are the only other kind of facilities that are capable of doing it right now in an emergency. So what we need to do right now is approve the site location, give us the green light. We will take care of the rest. If you can have your assistance on putting the footing down or anything of a grant and aid, that'd be greatly appreciated. We need to work on getting a roof. We need approval for, first of all, the location, the roofing type, or any other types of permits that would be required. Keep in mind there's no power or electricity that is going to this roof. It is very similar to the Metchosin farmers market. We are actively fundraising, and we have a lot to go, but in the meantime, we have also some maintenance, deferred maintenance that has requirements to be remediated on our clubhouse. So we're trying to balance both right now. And again, we're pretty much the only people in Western communities that can do this now. There are no other places for animals or livestock to go in an emergency. Right, are there any questions?
Any questions, committee, for Ms. Whiten? Councillor Shuka?
Thank you, Ms. Whiten. Whiten or White?
Whiten.
White. Okay, thank you. Your timing for this is, I guess, my question, but I'm betting the answer is probably as soon as possible.
Yesterday would have been brilliant.
Yeah. I guess one of my thoughts would be, and this may be an unsatisfactory answer, but this sounds like it might be an interesting project to approach council during budget as a one-time project. So I might, suggest that. The other thing too is come back to us with a very specific request. I'm still working out how we would ever even consider funding midterm. I'm not sure maybe we'd be able to do that, but again, giving some thought to approaching us at next year's budget time might be worth.
Our group is pretty self-sufficient. The big thing we need is permission.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. And that might be something to think about, and then come back to us and exactly spell out what it is you need. Like, what is your ask of us? And
I do need permission to put them up, because we're going to be making changes to the footing in that grassy area. I need to level it out so that the temporary stalls can get put up. I need permission to go ahead with it, and then we can work with you to come up with budget. But more importantly, like, we are really keen on getting this going, and we have all of the avenues being pursued at this point because it's such a worthwhile cause in our group.
One other thing I might add is when the market was doing their stalls, the Museum Society was doing its portico. They did consult with the broader user groups as well. So, yeah, not seeking permission so much, but asking just for input, feedback, and all that. So,
and we have discussed with the farmers market group, and they were the ones that gave us their names for their contractors and their estimates for previous builds.
Okay.
Councillor, you have some comments?
Yeah, I just was wondering about the Agricultural Land Commission, because if there's anything permanent going into the ground, we do need to get permission to do it. And actually later on the agenda, we are going to be discussing that very thing. So we can't really give permission for anything until, like, that's one of the first steps, is we've got to go through them. As far as I know, we would have to go through the commission. I don't. Did the farmers market people do it for their footings?
There was discussion for the portico. I know that that may or may not have happened. I don't recall. But the cricket club certainly had to, as we recall from that.
Yeah. So that that can be a fairly lengthy process. So unfortunately, so it's just something to keep in mind. We can't just say, yeah, go ahead and do it, because we aren't allowed to.
So would us just leveling the area and putting down like 3/8 minus cart path and having the temporary stalls sit on top of that? I don't understand with how.
I think are you talking about concrete?
No.
So it's all permeable.
Yes.
Well, then it might be.
It's permeable, except that it will have a roof on it.
Right.
So, and because it's not just a 10 by 10, it's significantly larger. It is one of those things that'll be on the checkoff list possibly.
Yeah.
But our staff would know more about that.
And it's for housing animals, so I'm not sure how the ALR, like, this is kind of what it's for, is it not?
Yes, you still have to have permission to put buildings on ALR land. Is all it is a process, I believe.
Okay.
Mary Lily, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Apart from an emergency situation, approximately how many events would you expect per year to utilize these temporary stalls?
Currently, we're doing every Tuesday night or Tuesday this summer. We have events scheduled, either drill team practice, working equitation, guided coaching, or evening free play. We have an event about once a month in the summer months. In the winter time, we usually have a bit of a break just because of the weather, but we have been able to ride on New Year's Day for the last couple of days or couple of years. So I would say probably 12 events, like larger scheduled events, and then weekly practices, they would be able to be used.
Thank you. What I would suggest is if you liaise with our CAO, and then he can give you some information on the if we need to petition the ALR or the ALC for permission, given there's going to be a roof, and also the users group, Councillor Shu, municipal grounds, not to seek approval, but just to let everybody know what was happening. So check with the CAO.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Gray?
Yeah, through the chair. Thanks for your presentation. Seems like a brilliant idea. And as the mayor's saying, our CEO can help in terms of the process, but also the path to go back to council to get a decision.
Okay, thank you.
And the one comment that I have is, has the club engaged with members and non-members about sheltering in place? And do they have a directory of who to contact in emergency like the Backcountry Horse Club does?
We have been working a lot with the pods, the emergency outreach that way. And then the sheltering in place, of course, we're continuously reminding our members to have a plan, have the capability. And when you don't have the capability to shelter in place, what does that look like, and what is your exit strategy? Because not always is shelter in place the best scenario.
Correct, but if there is, like you're saying, either barn fire or ailments of some sort that livestock have to be displaced, is there maybe a neighboring property, that kind of shelter in place, maybe not in the same place, maybe next door they could go to, like a directory of who's got a trailer, who's got a neighbor that could help, like you were doing that when the Souk fire happened. I recall seeing a thread on that and taking horses outside the community to help with that. Do we have any of that connecting of neighbors in Metchosin?
Not organized in a grassroots method. We've, in all of our emergency preparedness clinics and seminars, we have strongly urged members to evaluate their own needs and evaluate what resources they have available, and to have their own plans. For us to, for example, the Buchanans, we don't know what they need, nor do we have the capability of listing out what resources would be able to actually help them. We strongly recommend every farmer and livestock guardian to have their own list done up ahead of time. And to analyze and talk to people before something bad happens, so that they have a plan. Again, we don't have anything written down or organized in that. We're a volunteer group that has limited resources.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions, committee? See none. Thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll move on to public participation. If there's anyone in the public that would like to speak at the mic, you have 4 minutes. State your name and the street on which you live. And I just ask that you, when you speak into the mic, you can adjust it as you watch others, and that you speak with respect to your council, the staff, and the members that are in the gallery this evening. Anybody like to go first?
Good evening. Good, thanks. Okay. First off, I want to make a couple of comments here. You have a full prepared package that I submitted earlier in your info package. This is going to be a summary, so that we, in the interest of time. So I prepared this document to address concerns that I have regarding the processes that surround the Firehall replacement. As I have reviewed the documents which I have been prepared for council, I find that there's something of a lack of rationale for proceeding in the fashion the council has chosen. And there appears to be something of a random or an ad hoc element in the decision process. And this is not to say anything negative about the fire department. This is all about process. So I believe that a need and risk assessment must be done to ensure that the district buys the correct product for the foreseeable future. Future population projections must be considered to ensure services are synchronized with demand. The council must become clear regarding capital costs, as well as future inflation-impacted operational costs. Senior government contributions to the initial capital cost must be realistically evaluated. The table that I presented in your full package provides with information on government contributions, senior government contributions, to the most recent 10 BC fire halls. I draw your attention to the largest contribution of approximately $2.5 million to the city of Quemel, a city of 25,000 people. I ask that council consider the ramifications of a potential large expenditure and how it may require borrowing as part or all of the capital cost, and the implications of long-term debt for local taxpayers. Moving on to needs and risk assessments, I draw your attention to comments from firefighters made at the meeting of June the 5th regarding health issues. If, as been suggested, the original fire hall is indeed contaminated with black mold, then the risk is to health, and the need is immediate. Stachybotrys, otherwise known as black mold, is known for causing chronic respiratory problems in susceptible individuals, irrespective of age and gender. If an assessment shows the presence of black mold in the building, and most 40-plus-year-old buildings on the south coast are contaminated to a greater or lesser degree with black mold, then all functions should cease in the building, personnel moved to temporary headquarters, and the structure dismantled, as remediation of a 75-year-old structure seems highly impractical. In summary conclusion,
Anybody else?
Diana Smith, 4488 William Head Road. Just an ordinary taxpayer, citizen, don't have a lot of expertise. But I support the new fire hall. I support option 1A. I think probably it's cost effective to do a new build rather than renovate something that needs everything from the foundations to the roof to the walls done. And then you get to design it the way you want. I imagine it might mean increased taxes, and definitely would be willing to pay more taxes without complaint when that comes up. I think some people are saying opposed to the ALR, that land being taken out of the ALR, but you've had farmers come and say that it's got hardly any agricultural value. And it just seems like a red herring to bring up the ALR situation. I mean, it's like a parking lot right now, and that's what we use it for, and access to all the district office and everything. At the meeting on Thursday, one of the steering committee people was saying, well, we might need it for that piece of land for greenhouses. But I think if we're in a state where we need that little scrap of land for greenhouses, we'll definitely need a very good Firehall and emergency response center, probably more than a greenhouse at that point. And one letter from a respected neighbor was saying the fire department responds more to medical emergencies than fires. Exactly. I think most of us in this room are more likely to have a medical emergency than a fire, but I want a quick response if I have a heart attack. And I'm more likely to get that from the fire department than a paramedic. I don't know where they come from. And I don't care what uniform they have at that point. And I think that was my point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ellen Frisch, Perry Crossroad. I attended the meeting a few days ago and in a much more emotional state then, for my own personal reasons. Again, support going forward with pricing out a new fire hall. What I want to talk about tonight, because this is the work that I do, is being realistic about the costing and the process that you're going through and establishing those principles for whoever is going to do the cost of that building. So you're clear on the footprint, on potential materials, what the give and take is if you want to design for alternative energy systems, where that might go, and what the offset is to your operating costs. So there are things that can be done with a building design, like the slope of the roof to capture maximum solar, understanding if that's going to cause a change in the overall cost of your typical roofing, and if so, is it offset by your operational cost? So giving direction to your architect with some parameters like that to include in the discussion, I think, is key. The other couple of items were discussed tonight here. The ALC, ALR issue, I see it as a bit of a red herring. We need it. It's the land, once it's developed, and particularly where it's proposed. If people who are here tonight in the audience who are familiar with construction, the first thing that's done is you strip the top 3 feet or more of whatever you're building. And realistically, there won't be much topsoil left there, because there can't be, because of the foundation and the weight-bearing structural fill that needs to go in to support the size of the driveways into the building and the proposed wash areas or what have you outside of the building. So it is a major, major project. And there will be no soil-based agriculture on that area ever again. And that's okay, because we are a growing community. We need this facility. I think we can look at, where does that soil go? It doesn't have to leave the property. And of course, the ALC has rules about that. It can be reused elsewhere. So things like that, building that into the conversation, I think will be key. Mr. Hardy, who spoke earlier, had some good items in his letter, and that's just scoping out what's the cost to dismantle the existing buildings. What's the order of magnitude for remediating for asbestos if we do want to use the existing buildings for other purposes. I think the term, I guess, is values-based engineering, making sure that as this is being designed, that the team that you're working with at your architectural firm, because I did hear him say we're a green firm in response to that question, we're a wood-first firm, understanding what that means for how he is going to design the facility and what that means for how the facility is going to be built. Because that often triggers a stick build, which can be more expensive than having it designed in a slightly different way, which could be built off-site in pods and brought to site and craned into place. And that's a very common method of building now for commercial buildings throughout the island, using firms all over the island who now do that. So again, just the wrap up, as I understand the next phase, moving to that Class D quote, would be going to the same architect that's been part of this same process, So being very clear in the direction that he gets, so you get the information back you need without any gaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, committee. My name is Brent Donaldson. I'm a member of the Firehall Steering Committee. I'm also a retired firefighter who spent 35 years in the trade, both as a career and also as a volunteer. One thing I can say is that I understand the firefighter culture and I 100% support the fire department here. What is unfortunate, though, is that it's turned into them against us. And in the fireman community and the rural community, that's unfortunate. But that's the nature of Metchosin from anybody that's lived here for any length of time. Certainly, my concerns is there is a disconnect, or there was a disconnect between the subcommittee and the steering committee. Option 1A was never discussed at the committee level. And the first I found that it was moving ahead was in an agenda package, which was sad. I direct your attention to the Skyline report, April 22nd, 2025. The last paragraph, basically I'll paraphrase, is that an option for the district would be to get some costing. And certainly I feel that that would have been important. And there wasn't much entertainment at that committee level in May to move forward with that. The current apparatus day is 29 years old. This building here is older. Respectfully to the men and women that work in this building every day, we seem to have forgotten about their well-being, because is this building seismic? Langford Fire Department is an example, a few kilometers away. It was built in 2001. I'm just wondering if they're fearing the stability of their structure. There's 24/7 members that work there, and it would be interesting to touch base with those folks to see if they've done a risk assessment on their building. There's no assurances of grants. There's approximately 120 million that's going to be spread out through the province. The most we can get is 7 million, but the most we could get is 500,000. So we need an option. If we're going to move forward with 1A, and that could be in the tens of millions of dollars, if we don't receive those funds, then what? I suggest that we regroup, find out what it costs to bring the apparatus bays up to seismic levels, remove the administration building, build a 2-story building like we originally were talking about building on site. Maybe consider moving the fire department to the school. There's classrooms there. On Thursday nights, when the fellows and gals are done they're practicing, maybe they could go to the community house, book it on Thursday nights, and they could have pizza and have a visit. I just think we need to look at this without haste, because it certainly is looking like that now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Gary Lamb, 860 Hackamore Drive. Just notwithstanding whatever the decision is made regarding the Firehall, and last week we heard, and I've heard it for a long time, there are a number of risks at the Firehall that warrant immediate attention. And the leaking roof, that's been in place for some time, I understand, and it appears at times it still represents a problem, which I question why we haven't rectified that. The second one that Mr. Hardy spoke to is the mold. I don't know if that's a result of the moisture getting in as a result of a leaking roof or whatever, but it appears that that's been there for some time as well. And then the third one is the rats. Unfortunately, we live in the country. I think a number of us probably have at some point in time been exposed to whether it's mice or rats, and you deal with it. So I guess in closing, I just question why, with these issues having been in place so long, they haven't been addressed, and we still have them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening. Mike Hornick. I chair the Firehall Steering Committee, and I just wanted to just cover a few things here which, moving forward with the option that's in front of us that the architect has recommended to us, is option 1A. What we get out of that is we get conceptual drawings and a Class D estimate to include a few different options in that, which would be the temporary housing of a fire department on the adjacent lands. So that would be an option, so we can see what that would cost to do that. Also the demolition cost of the existing building. So I don't think we're not committed to anything. This is furthering the information gathering, which is what the job is. This isn't carved in stone to build. That's not what we're doing here. We're trying to complete our study, which gets everybody the costing information that I think is mostly what everybody's looking for. Thanks.
Councillor Gray, yes.
Through the chair, Mike, I wonder if I could ask you a question. We've had a lot of presentations of people saying they want the fire hall built at the preferred option. And yet I think what you're telling us as the chair of the steering committee is that, in fact, maybe it's nice that people think that way, but in fact, we don't have the information. We're not even close to that decision. Is that correct?
I don't think that's not necessarily correct. No, the architect that we've hired to do the feasibility study has recommended this as what he feels, his professional opinion is that is our best option. That's what it's looking like.
Right, but that's without any cost. So we have no idea what the costs are. So should we be asking people to jump in and say they support a particular option of a number of them without really finishing the job here? You're saying we need some more information.
Right.
We just heard from Ellen Frisch about there's a whole variety of ideas that we might still provide that would maybe change the cost still.
Yeah, and I think what would happen, that sort of thing would happen with the construction drawings, right? So as you advance the construction design, you would go into value engineering. But we're so far from that at this point. We're basically running blind here. This is what the architect and structural engineers are recommending. This looks like your best and most economical option. If we move forward with the option that's recommended to us, we will at least get some costing towards it, conceptual design, but the ability to apply for the grant. And from there, we can, get to the next step.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have some questions, ideas, concerns, topics they would like to discuss?
I'm not sure how you get costing for all the options without, looking at all the options and make that choice. Anyway, council, neighbors, tonight, I won't speak with anger. Darren, Graceland. I'll speak with mourning. So we came here to build a fire hall, but what we've witnessed is the quiet cremation of something more fundamental, trust. So on June 5th, my public submission was rejected, not for language, not for length, but because it dared to speak plainly about the gap between campaign promises and council's actions. Tonight, a portion of that submission was finally included, but only the palatable half. The truth was cherry-picked and the hard questions put away. Council doesn't have to agree with my words, but it shouldn't fear them. If public meeting is only welcomes praise, it's no longer public, it's theater. We've seen fire halls shaped behind closed doors, trails pushed forward without record, and committees with no minutes, no agendas, and no accountability, all defended as normal governance. But remember this, transparency was not a bonus feature of your campaign promises. It was a core promise, and those promises are not props, they're contracts with your constituents. When council silences critiques while inviting applause, what kind of process is being built? Who gets to speak and who gets erased? I urge this council to reflect not just on what you're building, but how. Because governance is not just bricks and grants and design drawings. It's the invisible scaffolding of trust. And tonight, that scaffolding is crumbling. At some point, each of us will have to account for the role we play, not just what we were told to do, but what we allowed to happen. The discretion to deem public input irrelevant carries with it a heavy responsibility, one that will outlast any directive from above. So before we move on, I would just ask that we all, contemplate with, I think I've just got about a minute left, a minute of silence to consider the death of transparency and what that means to us.
Mr. Brown, do you have anything else to say? If not, I would ask that you sit down and we'll get another person to stand up.
I've just got one, my time isn't quite up yet, so we'll just 30 more seconds. Contemplating what transparency means to you, how important it is to your constituents.
Thank you.
Hello, Nicole Shukin, Le Bon Road resident. I just have to comment on that recent comment about transparency and just contextualize it a little bit. Mr. Brown is the treasurer of the new APRM executive and the chair. So as a member of the APRM, I've been requesting that the APRM be transparent in publishing the minutes from its recent AGM. There's no website up for the APRM currently. The minutes from its AGM aren't published. The information about the changes on its exec have not been made transparent to members. So I just would qualify those comments about transparency in relationship to the source. Thanks.
Excuse me, there's some other people who'd like to speak. Go ahead.
Gavin Aubrey, Metchosin Road. I just wanted to come address Mayor and Council. Last week when I spoke, I was quite emotional, and I came not only as a firefighter but as a citizen to encourage the continued process of the feasibility study, which, as we've heard, doesn't lock us into one option but provides many. And I was a spokesperson for my fellow firefighters, fellow members of the community that came here to support not only my discussion, but their own vested interest in their current and future workplace. As members of this community, we don't often put our voice forwards. We often take a servitude role. And this was one option, one time where we came together to voice our opinion. We didn't mean to intimidate or to shut down the voices of those who might speak against us. In fact, we would encourage it, because the more public discussion there is, the more interaction, the more we can make this a great process that will lead the community. What a fantastic opportunity we have here to build a fire station, to build a center of our community that will last for generations. I in particular am in favor of building a new fire station next to where the current one is, specifically for that reason. Adding in a 30-year-old fire station, or apparatus bay, a 30-year-old part of our firehouse, doesn't land in longevity. We want this to be a structure, a firehouse, a place of gathering, a place of events and birthdays that will last for generations and generations. When I view my future and the want to start a family, I want to see my kids as Metchosin firefighters when I'm and their grandkids and their grandkids. And I don't want them to be doing that in an apparatus bay that is currently deficient. I want them to be doing that in a place that I know will stand seismically, a place that will lend to their safety and their health, a place that's future-proofed. So again, when I spoke, it wasn't to intimidate, it wasn't to shut people down. And when we stood at the back, it was because we were in uniform on a Thursday night and we didn't want to take up chairs for everyone else. It was to invite discussion and make sure that our voice was heard in a way that was public and that everyone can understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to have a moment to talk about anything here?
Darren Brown, Graceland again. I better just clarify, I was speaking on my own behalf there, not on behalf of any other organization, and I do belong to several, but not on behalf of me.
Correct. Thank you. Okay. Okay, committee, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda. The adoption of the minutes, page 15.
Move adoption.
Moved by Mayor Little, second by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And on page 23, the Special Finance Committee meeting of May 26.
Move adoption.
Moved by Mayor Little, second by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And receipt of minutes on page 25. This is the Peninsula and Area Agriculture Commission, April 10th, 2025.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Epp, second by Councillor Shukin.
Just one
Yes.
comment, Councillor Donaldson. It's great to be seeing these on a regular basis now. Yeah.
Yes, it is. We're moving for more advanced now that we have good terms of reference and some staff support. And on that note, I would like my fellow councillors consider attending one of their meetings. It's always on the same night that I have a board meeting. So just put that out there that in the future, there'll be a formal request coming to you. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And page 31, the Parks and Trails Advisory Select Committee of May 20th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Shukin.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Little. Call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And page 31. Oh, we did that one. Page 37. The Healthy Communities Advisory Select Committee of May 27th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Epp.
Second.
Second by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And page 41, Environmental Advisory Select Committee.
I'll move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And page 45, we have business arising from the minutes, healthy communities. Councillor Epp, can you please speak to this?
Sure. The committee has been brainstorming ideas to have some events going on at the school. And as I mentioned previously, there's going to be some type of an open house sort of event later in the fall. But we did think of that a movie night might be fun. So we're just looking into that. And the committee chair, Sherry Work, has been finding out various options that we can to acquire movies for free. The library is one source because otherwise the performance fees for movies that don't have some kind of an option of exclusion are fairly high. So yeah, so it's basically to be announced coming up, but I would move that council support what do I got here? Recommend that support the Healthy Community Advisory Select Committee hosting a community movie night at the gym this summer.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Mayor Little. Discussion? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I just would suggest that we don't have an alcohol policy, so probably not a good idea to have alcohol at the event. Would it be free? And that's a question, I guess.
Yeah, we're hoping to make it free or by donation. We need to touch base with our CFO just to find out. Our hope was that we actually might be able to collect a bit of money to support purchasing like sports equipment for the gym or things that we could use that are needed there. So,
thank you.
Councillor Shukin?
Will it be a scary movie? No, seriously. If I can't watch scary movies by myself, but together I can. So I would advocate for a scary movie.
So do I have to go with you?
Yes.
And will this be coordinated with the movie nights that are happening at the community house, or is it just this different seasons that takes place? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but we will check on that.
Okay, that's great. Sounds exciting. Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we have reports, 7.1 on page 47, and I'll ask Mr. Creek to speak to this report, please. This is the Firehall financing analysis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So everybody, I think most people are here for Thursday night, and then now we get to talk about money. So first off, good news. Here is our current reserve funding. We got the Growing Community Grant from 2023. That was from the province. Current balance was 2.6 million, or we're just earning interest on that. I put 2 stars on that because it's it's in reserve, but it's really more of a grant, right? So we have to use this money by March 31st, 2028. And so when I got here, it was kind of indicated that the money would end up being used for the fire hall, but nothing was written in stone. So I just kind of kept that in my head. The building replacement reserve sitting at 3.4 million. And so that's been saved up over the last decade or so. We've been contributing about $300,000 to $400,000 a year to that. And then our gas tax, so it's at $1 million in the bank. We receive about $250,000 a year from that. And it can be used for either retrofitting a fire hall or building a new one. And then our general capital reserve of 1.2 million can be used for anything. There's no restrictions on that really. And so I've been thinking the first 2, if we stick to those, only going towards fire hall, we've got 6.3 million. If we include everybody else, then it's 8.4. Okay, oh, too far. There we go. So the grants that we've been talking about, we've got the Strategic Priority Fund from UBCM. So this was another issuance. They've sent money out in 2015, 2017, and 2022. As mentioned earlier, you can get up to $7 million for retrofitting or building a brand new fire hall. Application deadline is September 12th, 2025. That funding, from what I can see from those previous intakes, nobody's actually received $7 million. Highest number was $6 million. In the very first issuance, people were getting 11 million, but it seems like they kind of rolled back on what they were going to pay out, so they could give more money to more people. And then the Growing Communities Fund, so again, that was issued by the province, 2023. It gave us 2.4 million. We've been earning about $120,000 a year on that. And then we do have to start a project by March 31st, 2028, in order to meet their qualifications. Any questions at the moment? So, yeah.
I might jump in and ask, so the Strategic Priority Fund has an application deadline of September 12th, and your note at the previous meeting was that, paraphrasing, we better get cracking. if we're going to meet that deadline. And that's created, I would say, a fair amount of pressure on council and the fire department, on the steering group and everybody. So when I looked it up, this is a brand new fund. It has a 10-year time period. So these funds will be given out over the next 10 years. So there's actually plenty of time. September is just the very first intake. Is that correct?
Ooh, so through the chair, that 10-year plan was kind of at the start of that 2015 period.
It was announced in 2024, the 10 years.
So they take the money from originally the gas tax and they give it to UBCM, the Community Building Fund. And this is just another aspect of it.
So I read the press release, and it says it's a new amount of money come out over a 10-year period from 2024 to 2034, and it went on to say that this is the first intake of funds happening. So we probably need to get that totally clear for everybody. I'm reading just off the press release on the site at UBCM. It just seems to me that everybody should know there's going to be a second intake, a third intake, presumably over the 10-year period.
We'd certainly look into it. So the next part, whatever this option ends up entailing, like if our reserves and potential grant don't cover it, we would need to take on some debt. Now, the District of Metchosin is limited in debt options by legislation. So the municipality cannot exceed spending more than 25% of their annual calculation revenue from the prior year on debt servicing. So based on our 2024 revenue, our debt servicing limit is 2.2 million, meaning our total annual payments of principal and interest can't exceed 2.2 million. And then there's a couple ways in order to take on debt as well. If the District of Metchosin ends up with debt servicing options that cost less than $442,000 or 5% of that annual calculation revenue, you don't have to end up going to a referendum or AAP, the alternative approval process. However, if you're going to end up exceeding the 5-year repayment plan, then we would need to go to either a referendum or AAP. So as of June 2nd, the MFA has loan rates of 5 years, 3.2%, and then goes up to 4.66% for 30 years. And then for each $1 million, I put down what it's going to cost to service it. So 5 years, $220,000 a year. That includes only $32,000 of interest, and then down to $65,812 for 30 years, which is $46,600 of interest. So as we've talked about throughout the budget process, District of Metchosin generates $30,000 for each 1% interest or 1% increase in taxes. So when you're looking at those numbers, like we're paying $32,000 in interest. That itself is 1% increase in taxes. If we get up to 46, we're looking at just over 1.5%. And then each of those options themselves come in at 2.5% at the bottom, all the way up to 7.33% for the 5-year option. And then the big kicker on this project relates to inflation and interest. Right? So I was able to get information from MFA going back to 1991. So I took that and then looked at the non-residential construction inflation based in Vancouver. Like Victoria didn't start getting that detailed analysis until 2023. So I wasn't able to do a great comparison there. But the gray line there is the interest rate. And then inflation is the green line. So back in the 90s, everything was great. You'd save money, you get a lot of interest on it. Awesome. And inflation was near zero. It was actually negative for 1991. Then it just starts fluctuating. Then we hit the big old recession there in 2007-8. That's when everything really hit the fan for inflation and interest. It's kind of end up flipping spots. So in the last 9 years, interest on debt has exceeded inflation like 6 out of the 9 years, which is not great, kind of dependent. A lot of these numbers ended up changing around based on A, a recession, or B, based on what was going on in the provincial economy. And so when there was a greater demand on infrastructure and building, inflation went up. When there wasn't as much, it went down. And that's what we're kind of seeing right now, at least in the province, with BC itself, and as long in Canada. So in Canada, we've got the federal government that's really pushing infrastructure projects for nation building, pipelines, ports, rail, that type of thing. And in the province itself, there's a big push on housing and the infrastructure that's related to that. So with those two things combined, it would appear unlikely that inflation is going to be dropping back down to a 2-3% rate for non-residential construction. In the past, non-residential construction inflation has generally been about 2 times CPI, but it does ebb and flow. And then the final point is the District of Metchosin does actually have a debt policy in place right now, which avoids unnecessary long-term debt. They do have workaround in there relating to emergency situations and needing the debt to be repaid within 5 years. So that is something to be considered and then possibly adjusted if debt is going to be taken on.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
Excuse me, just through the chair. The previous diagram you're just showing us, is there an easier way to explain that to us? It sounds like it's not a great situation right now. I was curious about this drive. Well, first of all, it seems like the grant is into the future, so there's no rush for that. And then it seemed to me like maybe not a good time to be building, given all of the calls on labor right now. So presumably labor costs are up, making it, you know, is this the best time to do this in the first place? And then the tariff situation with materials and those kinds of things, again, that presumably will resolve over the next few years. But how does that all relate to the graph you're showing us here? Is that part of what you're talking about, the labor costs? So with other construction going on?
Through the chair. Yes, so labor costs, they're not predicted to be going down in Canada anytime soon. Like the established workforce with skilled labor, they're all baby boomers and they're within the range of retiring. Like half of our admin staff is within the next 5 years could retire. And it's the same thing out there with construction. Like they're predicting a big labor shortage in the future, which is only going to drive up costs for people that know how to build something. They're going to be taking full advantage of that. The tariff situation certainly could be driving up costs. Like the Prime Minister, he reversed most of the tariff increases that he put on the United States back in April. That's helped a little bit. He kept some inflation or some tariffs on steel, but he did remove a lot of them. So not too sure on where that's going to end up playing out. Like the last time President Trump was in power, he put in a lot of tariffs on China, a lot of different trade deals, and then when the Democrats got in power, they didn't reverse any of them. They just stuck with them because they were making money. So I can't guess on where it's going to be in 5 years. But in general, inflation is not going to, the chance of deflation happening is so slim, right? When I was researching this, it was 2 times in the last 50 years that it actually drove things down far enough. And that's where looking at it, is it going to actually be cheaper? Extremely unlikely that building it in 2030, 2035 is going to be cheaper than doing it in 2026. Yeah.
So, through you, Councillor Donaldson. Mr. Krieg, thank you very much. I thought the information you had about inflation, about non-residential construction in Victoria, what little was there was quite interesting, and also reflected, you know, interest rates as well. So could you get into that a little bit? What you did, what you were able to see from non-residential construction inflation here?
Through the chair. Yeah, so when you looked at the information, so they had the first quarter of 2023 through the first quarter of 2025 available, and it was quite high at 11.3%. When I was looking at it, they did reference the fact that the inflation on Vancouver Island was higher than Vancouver. So it would have been nice to see that information going back to 2000. It's just Stats Canada wasn't collecting any information for this metropolis area. And so, I don't know, everybody's lived here longer than I have. So I don't know if you've experienced inflation that's been, 4 or 5% when Vancouver's sitting at 2 or 3. But from what I've seen, it makes sense. There's a lot more shipping. We buy a lot more products from America just because it is coming on a boat rather than crossing rail across Canada and then dropped off over here on a ferry. And then our interest rates, so they have been going down, like the 120,000 I mentioned that we were earning on the Growing Communities Fund. That's when we were earning over 4% interest on those funds. Now we're getting just below 4%, in some cases below 3%. So the money is not there to offset the inflation increases anymore, like it was back in the 90s, you can see. So it's not, the future is not looking good for investments beating out inflation costs. And then, so at Thursday's meeting, there was talk about a discounted cash flow related to some idea of, again, is it going to be cheaper in the future or not? It's not something, a discounted cash flow is not something we end up would do for a building such as a fire hall. That would be something more of a school where there's future cash flows that we're going to be having. We can discount that back to the current present value, take that off of what our cost is going to be, find out if it's positive or negative, and decide whether to do something. For a fire hall, which is a public service, the best analysis would be like a life cycle cost analysis or a cost benefit analysis. I can lean more to the life cycle cost analysis. I can deal with the numbers. Cost benefit relies on a lot more of the qualitative factors that I myself don't know greatly about, like job creation. Do we care? I don't know. It's not me. Community safety. Is it going to generate more safety than what we have right now? They're doing a great job with what they have. Could they do better? I don't know. And then reduced insurance premiums. When I've talked to the fire chief, in order to drive down the overall rate that every resident pays inside of Metchosin, we do need to get better equipment, better services, and that can help everybody save money, but hard for me to calculate a number on that. Life cycle cost analysis, much easier on my end. We can find out the capital costs once the study is completed on which option is chosen, whether retrofitting or building. Operating and maintenance costs. Generally, people take a percentage of the total cost of the building in order to calculate what that's going to be on a year. Anywhere from 2 to 4% seems like the numbers on people. Utilities and energy uses. We can get lower energy use by having a well-sealed fire hall. Isn't leaking hot air all the time. It's cooler in the summer. We can use solar panels to reduce our electricity needs, heat pumps to reduce our natural gas usage, and then rehabilitation and replacement costs. So how much goes into maintenance? Right now, the total book value of that fire hall and apparatus bay was $660,000. We're putting in anywhere about from $30,000 to $40,000, which is about almost 7% of the building original cost. We've gone up to $48,000 in 1 year, but that hasn't really stuck around. Then end of life or disposal costs. I think Mike mentioned earlier about getting that determined through a study. Might be mistaken on that, but we can find out what it would actually take to end life on that product when it's finished. I think the architect said it would be about 75-year lifespan. So those are the type of things that much easier to consider, but trying to find out if this thing is going to be cheaper in the future. My best guess, not a chance. Like every year it's going to go up, especially when it's something that costs 10 million, 15 million, whatever number wants to come out. When we're talking about that kind of number, it's much better to do it now rather than later. We've seen it with our trucks. Last year we purchased a new single axle truck. Original budget on that was $275,000. That sounded good back when it was proposed in 2022. By the time we got it in 2024, we're talking $320,000. Not the end of the world, but it certainly ate up that municipal equipment reserve. When you extrapolate that onto a $10 million building, you're looking at almost $11 million in 2 years, rather than $10 million. So if you want to spend an extra $500,000 per year, which equates to about a 15% tax hike each year, it's sizable. So from a kind of message of get it done sooner rather than later, if we get the $7 million now, it will do us far better than waiting to get $7 million in 2028 or 2029, because the cost of this building is going to be, if we started at $10 million, 2028, you're talking $12.5, $13 million on a good range, right? So the quicker it can be done, the better on their financials. But, no, any questions?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. It's very enlightening. I'm just wondering, the building replacement reserve is only at 3.4 million. And since we've known that the Firehall is an aging facility and it's needed replacement for at least a decade, I'm a bit surprised that that's not higher. And so maybe we also need to look at, in our future budgeting workshops, look at the other buildings and have a more realistic, this isn't a building remodeling fund or reserve, it's a building replacement fund. And I think we need to contribute to that every year, so we have more realistic funds in those reserves. Can you comment on that for me?
Certainly, through the chair. So yes, it's not a significant amount of money. I've looked at a couple of documents that the chief has shared. Looks like they were saving, back in 1990, it was like $50,000 a year to this, when they were expecting to spend $1 million on replacing the fire hall. The issue with Metchosin was everything going to reserves is essentially based on A, getting a surplus from budgeting more on expenses than what there were, and then B, taking the amortization of buildings and equipment, throwing that into reserve. And so talked about earlier this year that it's fine to put away the money from amortizing a building and equipment into the reserve, but it's not going to be enough to recover the replacement cost of it. Like when we amortize the roads, or even this building, right? If we spent $2 million on it, when we go to replace it in 50 years, this is not going to be $2 million, right? We're talking, again, 10, 15, whatever it might be. So you need to take the amortization, put it in there, and increase it by 5%, 10%, and then come to 20, 30 years, 50 years down the line, and you should have enough. But it certainly hasn't been enough in the past.
Good question. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, just following up on Mayor Little's point, I remember it was December 5th, Mr. Creek, that you brought us a report, and I think what it said is that we're not in a financial position to replace our district assets when they need replacing currently. So our financial situation is not that great. And we're looking at here a project amounting to millions of dollars. I think our conclusion, or your conclusion rather, was that our reserves are underfunded to the tune of $672,941, which we can only make up by increasing taxes. And then we did talk about that this year, but this council's decision was not to begin to build up those reserves, and that's just a month and a half ago or so. The other thing that the other report that we talked about earlier today, or we're in touch with on March 3rd, you gave us a different report, and that was that Metchosin's projecting significant challenges to fund future operations without cuts to service or substantial increase to residential taxation and or additional revenue strategies. So we're in a situation where our reserves are inadequate to just run the operation here. A number of years out, I think you described to us, if we put in 1% per year, 15 years, we'd be in good shape. But tonight we're talking about actually spending millions, not actually filling up those reserves. If we did move and use the tax reserve and the general capital reserve, I noticed that the general capital reserve is at 1.2 million, but the optimum amount would have been 3 million. So we're a long way from getting to bring that reserve back if we're to spend it. Do you have any thoughts about our general financial circumstances and then this idea of going into debt at the moment?
Through the chair. So correct. Like, the money that we have saved up right now is not enough for the district to replace all of the assets that we have.
That includes the fire hall, all the buildings we have, the roads, the bridges.
Yep, absolutely. And so what we need to do is definitely increase taxes, put an infrastructure levy out there, start putting that away. Where we do have enough, like we can operate, right? The next 5-year capital plan, totally covered. That's fine. Like we're doing little drips and drabs here and there. It's just not enough to cover these one-off big items like a fire hall or a municipal hall.
And those drips and drabs of capital, is that the impact that you describe here? There, if we use up these all the reserves and spend it 8.4 million, then there would be a projected impact on our capital expenditures. I suppose that means we wouldn't be doing improvements at the school that we have planned and other things like that.
Through the chair. Correct. So right now our general capital reserve is being used for the school updates like the septic tank, that type of thing. The gas tax is going towards roads and trails. And so with one thing that we do get that $250,000 a year from the gas tax, so that keeps getting refunded. That's not on us to replenish, but the general capital reserve certainly is on the district itself.
And the other one, we have the Flesh Road Bridge, which we're talking about several $100,000 potentially. Does that get impacted as well?
It could be. Sorry, through the chair. It certainly could be. But right now, based on the cost of it, we're looking at 1 year of gas tax that could go towards that. It's available for that. We can't use it for assorted school items, though.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Creek? Councillor Shukin?
That's okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Okay. Councillor Gray?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Mr. Creek, I wanted to ask about the debt question. So when I look at it, I'm just using, well, I don't know if this is conservative or not. The other night we were given a figure of the square footage cost, and we have to realize that what our architect was giving us was just a number. It wasn't a certain at all, but a range of $550 $650 per square foot, with a site of 16,000 square feet. So that would mean that if it took the high end, $650 per square feet, I do that because Nanaimo spent $909 per square feet, and Saanich is spending $1,980 per square feet. So if you go to the high end and say just 650, that gets us to $10.4 million. And if we accepted that to be a Class D estimate, that's plus or minus 50%. So the maximum there would be $15.6 million for the fire hall as described. I think we can probably expect an overrun. So if you put a small overrun compared to what's been going on elsewhere, which are large, like 40%. If we put a 20% overrun, that gets us to $18.64 million. We would need to borrow for that, presumably.
Through the chair. Correct. And so if we used up our general capital, gas tax, and the reserves, or the grant and everything, we'd be looking at just over $15 million to go.
Yeah.
So then if you had 18, you'd need borrow about $3 million.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would certainly require it.
Getting up there.
There's one option that the district itself has right now as an extra reserve, and it relates to the West Shore Parks and Rec Society. If the district decided to pull out of that society, we right now have almost $2 million in a rec stabilization reserve. That money has been set aside for any capital projects with the West Shore Parks and Rec Society, like a new ice rink or pickleball court, whatever they're going to do. You have to give 1 year back away from the West Shore Parks and Rec Society. If you did, we'd have that extra $1.9 million to put towards whatever we want, transferring to another reserve.
Thank you. So basically, if we remove all the funding we've got everywhere, don't replenish our reserves that we need to do, still facing significant financial challenges, I guess we strip mine the West Shore Parks and Rec, and maybe we could make it without debt. But saying that all doesn't happen, we've been debt-free for 40 years now. Going on debt requires, as you mentioned, a referendum or an alternative process. I presume in Metchosin we have a referendum. And it's been interesting as people came up the other night telling us that, we should pick the preferred option. I was kind of a little bit cheered by the fact it's not actually us who's going to choose that. It's going to be the people who are standing up to tell us, so they'll all get to vote. And I think what we're trying to do is get the information we need available for a referendum. I'm not sure, though, when I looked at the briefing notes that you provided previously, it said if we want to go for a grant in September, which I'm arguing is not necessary, until we could go through the due process and our due diligence here and get the information together that our committee chair is suggesting we get together. Doing all of that, let's say we did go in September, how does it work? We get a feasibility report, we sign have a council motion saying we're going to build this thing. We commit that we will take care of all the overruns. Where is it? We know that we'll go into debt, let's say. Where does a referendum happen? We have to do this in good faith, presumably. Do we have to do the referendum before we make the application? Midway? Afterwards? Where does the referendum fit in?
Through the chair. Good question. I'd have to go back to our deputy officer on that one, and possibly the chief CAO to see where they would want to be putting that.
Great.
I would think that as long as we got resolution from the council to go forward with it, then we would put it to referendum as soon as possible, and then leave that up to. If the referendum says no, then we just say, sorry, we're not going to take your money for the grant, and stop it there. But we'll have to check on that process.
Thank you.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, through the chair, I would suspect that if we continue on from tonight, we would get the Class D estimates would be more precise or more informative regarding pricing. If we were successful with the grant, and depending on the amount, it's at that time we would choose to either go to an alternate approval process, an AAP, or a referendum. No decision has been made thus far on the district Metchosin going the referendum route, but it would be at that point that we would pivot and build a fire hall to whatever means we have and any financing that we have available. Thank you.
Councillor Craig?
So just through the chair again, Mr. Creek, so the idea would be that we would in the application process, we'd let the people receiving the application know that it all depends on our ability to get the money on our side of the deal.
Through the chair? Yep. And we'd put that in the correct application and say we're still waiting for public approval in order to cover any overruns.
Great, thank you. I so much appreciate the work you've been doing, Mr. Creek, on the asset replacement question. I mean, that seems to me to be fundamental to our future here. And I know the council kind of ignored the idea of putting forward some money this year to start it rolling. But I guess my other concern about that is you've begun the look, but will we be developing an asset management plan when time goes forward? Kind of laying out every building, everything when it needs to be done. I'm a bit concerned that, again, the question, looking at the financial situation we're in, the idea is to spend an awful lot of money, thinking is our annual budget $8 million, and we might be spending something like $18 million here. So it's a lot of money for this little district. Wouldn't it be better to have an asset management man in place where we know where the money needs to go? We need to do something in the school, we need to do something with the roads here, and then move towards dealing with these two fire hall buildings?
Through your chair? Yep. So setting up the gold standard of an asset management plan involves planning out for the next 100 years on where everything's going to go. Something I have not done for that type of period of time. the fire chief has a good 10-year plan for what they need for replacement for their equipment. To build that out will take quite a bit of effort. To say which way or the other and to delay this project, from what I've seen, this new fire hall has been delayed for decades. And so to kick it down the road for another a year or two or 3 or 5, you can certainly do it. That's under your decision, but the quicker we do it, it will be cheaper now.
I might, I'm not sure decades, the building's only, the apparatus bay is only 30 years old. Certainly it's been talked about, and I think the older building, the older half of it for sure.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, just a comment on the grants. There was a comment made earlier this evening that there's no assurance on grants, which is absolutely sure, but the one thing that we're sure of, if we don't apply, we won't be even eligible for it. So that is an assurance. I think we have a very good chance of receiving substantive funds because one of the requirements for the application is a feasibility study. That's an enormous effort, as we've seen in our district, and it costs money. Many districts and many cities have not rallied to get to that point of having the feasibility study. So that is a feather in our cap that we've already got that available for the application process.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment that the mayor's made, and I guess it's a question of when you apply and what you do, and if you've got your house in order before you do that. For me, the debt question is very important. I wouldn't vote to put the district into debt, but I would vote for a referendum on the question, for this purpose. And I think we've heard, we've got quite a bit of correspondence here. And there's a lot of questions just about what we should be doing in the circumstance. I used an example the other day of being a medical doctor. So once more, in medicine, what happens is we think about preventing illness sometimes with medication. So someone might be worried that they might have a heart attack, so we might give them a cholesterol-lowering medication. And the idea is you're trying to prevent this heart attack, which might happen in the future or may never happen, and you give them medication, and the medication has side effects. They all do. And if the side effect is too bad, then often the medication is stopped. In this instance, the Firehall is the medication, but the side effect is debt. And the question is, in our financial circumstance, how will anyone at any time, as I mentioned earlier, the 40 years we've been here, we haven't had debt, and we've run it that way. And I'm quite concerned about that aspect here. In a few minutes, I'll mention an alternative approach that may address that issue.
Councillor Shukin, do you have a comment?
I have a general comment about the issue before us, and I'm not sure I've got anything more from Mr. Creek, potentially, so I don't know if we're into general discussion.
I don't know that anybody has any more questions for Mr. Creek. I think we've got a pretty, not yet. No, there's a lot of questions around costs. There's a lot of things we don't know. We just know what we've got in the bank, so to speak. But not enough, obviously. Thank you very much, Mr. Creek. So did you have a general question that you want to bring forward?
Sure. Two things strike me from what we've heard last Thursday to tonight, and based on the information that we've been studying for months now. We've had the report for not that long, I would say, but we've been studying the question for some time. And there's two things that strike me. Number one is the need is there, and it's clear in terms of seismicity and that the underperformance of both buildings, and also the occupational health and safety needs. the need is definitely there in terms of upgrades or improvements or new buildings on both levels, Apparatus Bay and Firehall. The second thing that strikes me is we need to understand cost. I don't disagree with what Mr. Hardy said earlier, that maybe the process has not been as optimal as we would have wanted. But the one thing that strikes me is we're not going to move ahead in a knowledgeable way by delaying further. We've become very good in this community about delaying improvements to the fire hall. And I'm prepared to move the motion and to take that next step. It's not what one might call, again, a final notice to proceed. We're not committing to building, but we're taking that next step in terms of the overall feasibility of this project. Now, we have talked in the past about, the potential impacts to the future of this community. But one of the impacts to the future of this community is if we do not proceed in addressing those issues around seismicity and occupational health and safety, there are some severe implications that could come in terms of the fire hall being deemed, a risk by occupational health and safety, and implications coming from that as well. So I believe the best thing we can do is what is before us, is move to select the option that we've been discussing, that the architect has also recommended, and get a costing on that, and then from there proceed with our next steps. So thank you, and I will be prepared to move the motion when the time's right.
Thank you. Okay, so the next part of this section is the Metchosin Firehall Building Assessment from Johnson Davidson Architecture. Any further comments on that? Councillor Gray?
I'll just follow up. This is the report that lays out a series of deficiencies in the fire hall. And just give me 1 second, take a look here. A series of these deficiencies relate to, as Councillor Shukin has just said, relate to a non-compliance with work-safe standards. And we talked about this the other night, and I think that, I'd like to make a motion that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council direct the CAO to resolve all non-compliance with BC work-safe standards described in the draft Firehall feasibility study in short order and report back to Council on completion. If someone has seconded, I'll explain.
I'll second that for discussion.
Thank you. I really want to pick up on what Councillor Shukin said and take action. No dillying around. Let's get on this. It seems to me that we have problems with an unsafe storage platform. We have a ladder in the hose drying tower, and we have the vehicle exhaust question that all fit into the BC WorkSafe standards, and that it's not appropriate for us at Council, having been made aware of those concerns, not to deal with them forthwith.
Mayor Little?
I was wondering if we could ask the fire chief to comment on what has been done in the past, recent past, and in the past regarding some of these deficiencies.
Chief Dunlop, comments, please.
Yes, there's several different infractions. If you were to take a look at a current model of a fire hall, so you've mentioned a few. For example, the mezzanine storage area. For that, right now, we do have a policy in place that we don't stand on it, and signage. Is it still safe for people to stand on? No. We sometimes need to stand on it, and we have signage not to do that. It's a temporary fix. To fully remediate that would mean more of a structural support on it. So it would be quite invasive. We'll talk about the rat issue. We've had a rat issue for a number of years, and we are in the country. We are going to have rodents to a certain extent. We have had people in to to take a look and recommend some ways to get rid of the little critters. So we have to have some traps, and we have the little sonic things. They still come in, and they will always come in just due to the fact that Firehall, as you know, is old. And there are areas, in order for us to completely get rid of them, we have to actually do, again, more structural type repairs and corrections, right? Doorways are, off kilter and, little hole and they can sneak in. So same for the ceiling and that sort of thing. So there is a Band-Aid right now that we're doing, and we could certainly increase the amount of having somebody come in and check for the rodents and set live traps, and we could step it up a little bit, but you'll never mitigate it completely. The mold issues discussed tonight, I don't recall ever saying that we had black mold. We do have mold. We did have an air quality test done. We did have some of it treated. It will continually come back just due to the moisture in the Firehall, due to its age, and also due to unfortunately, the situation with the roofing right now. There have been a couple of suggestions regarding the roofing. While we can't, the flat roof on the original part of the administrative building, in previous years, and this is going back several years, we've had people in to give us a cost, what it would be to actually replace the roof. And 3 of the companies we had in would not replace it. They just, it'd have to be, the trusses and everything would have to be redone just because of the damage that's already been done there. So we haven't had anybody in the last probably 2 years. We have had people come and try and repair it. And again, nobody wants to give us a warranty or anything on that. It's like, well, we'll throw a little bit here and hope it works for you, kind of thing, because it is past its lifespan. Yeah, I mean, those are a few of the issues. The vehicle exhaust extraction system, we asked WorkSafe about that. I'm going to say roughly 10 years ago. It might have been sooner than that. I don't recall the exact time. And with the intent that we were looking at the apparatus replacement is something that's coming down the road. So as a Band-Aid, they did accept the fact that we could do the policy, which we have in place, that all the doors have to be open when the vehicle starts, and we roll it out onto the apparatus bay while we're waiting for, for the people to get in. So to eliminate as much as possible that vehicle exhaust. That one issue we can't repair or do anything, or we have not done anything, is the gear that's actually in the apparatus bay with the exhaust and all those fumes and everything that's there. It collects all that. So then, of course, we wear it and we breathe that in. So that's a kind of one of those things that one's a little bit harder to do something about, but we can certainly investigate some opportunities for short term. But again, to your point, these are short-term fixes, and we can step them up a little bit. Some of them, not all of them. Some of them we've kind of done what we can do. We can't put a full, fire protection system into the apparatus bay. It just wouldn't be worth it. And remember, anytime that we change anything that's kind of structural, we trigger upgrades. So we're kind of in that little bit of a conundrum on, yes, we want to make things safe. Right now, I think we've made them, we have a really strong WorkSafe group that goes around and does inspections. We've made it as safe as we can for right now. Are there things we could do? Yes, for the sleeping quarters, we could put in heat pumps. Right now, we have the mobile little air conditioners for heat issues. And we can investigate some of these things for, running water out, like troughs or something in the ceiling to get the water to minimize any more water damage. So there are things we're going to be getting some prices on to see if we can, try and make it a little bit better. But there's still going to be Band-Aids for what needs to happen in the future.
So in your opinion, it's not as catastrophic as it was described the other night. We can make do, or if it is, do we need to get our fire personnel, our emergency personnel out of the building, maybe temporarily at the school or whatever, and deal with it? I think the concern is health and safety was pretty clear. How immediate is that? And if we aren't going to do anything, which sounds like we are, we could be in dire straits with WorkSafe BC as a district.
I think that there are some things that we can take a look at closer for sure. I don't think getting sleeping quarters out there and getting that out here tonight is a thing. Maybe we need to do another mold testing or air quality testing in there for sure. and do proper monitoring on that. Previously, we've been nixed on doing that, right? The continual, like, let's try and keep it as safe as we can until such time as we do get the new fire hall. And I appreciate the consideration for doing that, because we do want to keep everybody safe, and we're trying to do what we can within the budget that we have. Does that answer your question sufficiently?
It does, and it just brings back, I understand the limitations on several of these. The rat, regardless if we live city or country, honestly, if you're on an island, there's lots of rats everywhere. I know in our own farm, we have attractants, and we've eliminated those access to those sorts of things. Also, having worked in the commercial industry, I mean, everywhere I go, there's, I see these black little boxes. And so do you think it might be worthwhile of us actually getting a contract with a company to start dealing with that, and, you know, keeping our doors closed more, keeping the attractants away? That means kitty food too. That sort of stuff. I mean, that is one thing we can do. It probably wouldn't cost that much.
Yes.
Jump in. We're all kind of off topic here. The 3 items identified in the report were an unsafe storage platform, a ladder in the hose drying tower, and vehicle exhaust. So that's what the motion's about, not about rats or the other things that we're talking about now.
Sorry, I thought it was about health and welfare.
Not you. It's about BC work safe standards that have been identified in the report. So I'm just following on Councillor Shukin's view that we got to get on this. Action is better than words. And so I guess I'm thinking that, as I said, that we direct the CEO to resolve all non-compliance with work safe standards described in the draft Firehall feasibility study. If I've missed one, grab it in short order and report back to us. And I just like a written report documenting what we've done and where we're at.
Councillor, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. Well, I certainly agree that we need to keep our firefighters safe. I believe that we need to make a decision tonight on what's on the agenda about the fire hall, because that makes quite a difference as to, say, how much effort or money we would put into the current fire hall to make it safe. We can do some, but there's some issues in there that could be, as you say, getting a company to deal with rats. So there are issues there. There's some that we can fix well enough to cope for the next couple of years while a new fire hall is being built. I don't believe that it'll be necessary to go in and do a complete, basically, rebuild of all the things that are wrong right now, and I won't support this motion.
Councillor Shukin. Oh, Mello.
Yeah, thank you. I won't be supporting the motion either. I am relieved to hear from the fire chief that a lot has been done to mitigate the issues regarding health and welfare concerns. And I thank her for that. And I think we're delving into operational issues. Surely this is between the CAO and the fire chief. She knows what is best, and she knows what the work safe standards are. It sounds like that she has been working even on the rat problem over the years to try and mitigate the risks and to provide Band-Aid solutions. And I think we should leave this with the CAO and with the fire chief.
Thank you, Councillor Shukin.
Can I ask Councillor Gray through you, or Councillor Gray, could you repeat the motion one more time, please?
Sure. And the reason that I'm making the motion is that it's been brought to the council's attention by the people working there that there's a problem, and we've got an official report that we commissioned. And so I didn't hear I don't see any recommendations from the CEO or the fire chief to deal with it. That's why I put it forward. The Committee of the Whole recommend that council direct the CAO to resolve all non-compliance with BC workplace standards described in the draft Firehall feasibility study in short order and report back to council on completion. I would expect, of course, if he's not able to, he'll let us know, or if he's got a better solution, he'll let us know. I just want us to be clear about what we're looking for. Take care of the problem, please.
Councillor Shukin.
So thank you very much, Mayor, or Councillor Donaldson. I won't be supporting this motion either. I have to say it would be great if Councillor Gray might rephrase this, bring it back as a notice of motion, but it's actually, as I hear the words right now, quite austere and has possibly tremendous cost impacts as well, because as we read it, direct the CAO to resolve all non-compliance issues. Well, I mean, that's digging into a very significant issue of which a new building is the likely answer to. So, and we were talking just in your exchange with the chief, the word catastrophic came up. Well, we have to remember that again, the Firehall is we've heard this before from some of our construction experts here, or those with significant experiences. The Firehall is a teardown. It is a unreinforced masonry building and will be essentially rubble if we run into a significant earthquake. The apparatus bay, and we've heard this many times now, in some places it's 10% to 40% of the actual building code right now. So there is the risk of catastrophic failures there. So again, the answer to all of this is to proceed carefully but expeditiously with the approach to a new fire hall. So I'm going to be voting against this. I know the resolution sounds really great, but it isn't. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed, Mayor Little, Councillor Shukin, and Councillor M. Okay.
I wonder if the chair would indulge me. I have a second motion that the committee of the whole recommend the council direct the CAO to address now the decontamination concerns, appropriate sleeping quarters, mold and pest control in the fire hall buildings, or report back to council with a written report. I'm happy to discuss this.
Seconder? I'll second for discussion.
Thank you. It seems to me that responsible governance means taking care of our staff. Again, this is all in this report, and we heard the other night, and we have a sheaf of letters here telling us we better deal with this stuff. Certainly in support of a new fire hall, as Councillor Shukin saying, but in the meantime, there's a concern about seismic upgrading, and we have people sleeping in that building. So I guess I'm thinking that if, in fact, we're moving to do this fire hall replacement for this very concern, we can get those people out of there now and deal with that. We heard a very heartfelt description from Mr. Aubrey, who's one of our firefighters, about the decontamination issues and his concerns for cancer. Another person stood up and also talked about the concerns of cancer for our time. So all the exposure they get now, while we're waiting 3 years to build this other building, I think it's worth getting a look at these and seeing what can be done. I understand that you guys have different views. I've spent a considerable amount of time training as a physician, spent time training in occupational health, in fact, a couple of years in the residency program for public health. These things are important, and I'd like to see us move ahead on them. I hope this motion is better worded for your consideration.
Any further discussion? Councillor Shukin?
Can I ask Councillor Gray to repeat the motion?
That committee of the whole recommend that council direct the CAO to address decontamination concerns, appropriate sleeping quarters, mold and pest control in the fire hall buildings, or report back to council with a written report.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, once again, these are operational issues. This council is concerned about the welfare. That is very clear, that they are concerned about the welfare of the firefighters, as is the fire chief. I did commit to speaking to the CAO and the fire chief regarding these issues. We did meet at 8 o'clock the next morning, so 12 hours later after the council meeting. And this is an operational issue between the CAO and the fire chief and I won't be supporting this motion. In the future, it's better to have notices of motions so that council is able to have time to reflect on the motions.
And Chief Dunlop would like to weigh in on a comment. Go ahead, Chief.
Thank you. Just further to Mayor Little's report, on Friday we did meet, and I do have, I am putting together a report for the CAO that will outline all the different work safety concerns and what we're currently doing for them, what another step could be, and what the final mitigation would be. So that will go to the CAO as soon as he returns, and I can have some costs on that as well.
That would be helpful for everybody. Thank you. Councillor Eck, do you have a comment?
I'm happy to leave this matter up to the fire chief and the CAO, and I don't think it's our business right now, so I won't be supporting the motion.
Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, I will. That's great that the chief is gathering some information. I think that helps address the concerns that we have right now. So,
okay, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Mayor Little, Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Epp, and Councillor Shukin opposed. Okay, so if we can move on to the engineering reports. Any comments on the 3 reports that are listed here? Skyline Engineering of April 22nd. There was a of 2025. There was an earlier one in May 24th, 2022, and then the Rizik Geotechnical of April 19th, 2022. These 3 reports were done on the existing site, which at the time, as we've heard reported out as well from the steering committee, was the focal point for the Firehall replacement. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I had a comment about sort of the package here about options, and I know we'll come to looking at options in a minute, or possibly we will. And I voiced before that I have trouble, choosing between options when we don't have an indication of cost. And it seems to me if we go to a referendum, watching what happened in Victoria at the Crystal Pool, the public would like to see a number of options before them to make a decision, and they'll need to have the costing. Our consultant the other day said, fair enough, a couple of priced options would be a good idea. But when I look at them, there's the preferred option. We'll perhaps talk about that in a minute. My worry there is the loss of the ALR land, but also the unintended consequence of losing parking for all of our events, the Farmers Market, Metchosin Day, the Metchosin Community Association garage sale, and whether any of those will be viable without parking. I think our community life will change immeasurably, and there'll be no going back. So we'll lose sort of our community thing there. Option 6, I mentioned the other day as a phased option. It wasn't recommended, but it's sort of like the Rizik engineering option. We get continued use of the apparatus bay. And that's where this, Mr. Creek has put up a life cycle analysis, a cost benefit analysis. I'm interested in that idea of looking to see how much each option would cost. Another option, which we haven't seen, isn't in any of the materials, a fixed price design build. And I think that deserves consideration. We could put out a request at $6 million to replace the admin building, make the apparatus bay more sturdy, and what could be done with the funds we have available basically is the question. So I see that option wasn't dealt with, or an option like that. That would be living within our means, no debt. And then the other question I have is about the Lombard property. For years and well before my time in council, like I think for several councils, publicly there have been discussions about the district having interest in acquiring the property. And I'm wondering if there's an option for the fire hall, the public work yard over there. If not, why not? So there's a few things like that that I think are worth pursuing. And yet tonight we have a recommendation from, I gather, a working group of a steering committee about what options there might be. My concern really comes from the basis of having set up the RFP on the advice of the CEO and the steering committee chair, who said we need a lot of information to get a proper decision. I think this went through the steering committee. We're now being asked to make a decision without the information, with only one type of option there. So these are the deliverables we've not yet received. Long-term infrastructure planning, a discussion of growth projections, an analysis of whether the EOC should be in or out, housing integration analysis, options and alternatives for renting and replacing portions of the existing structure, options and costs for various build options, order of magnitude cost estimates, that's pending, financial impacts and identifying potential financing strategies, not from the consultant or from the RFP. The RFP was to review the district's financial capacity in order to raise those issues that we've been talking about tonight. Also establish a project start and completion date. I think that's pending. Options for managing conceptual project through completion. I think that's needed. Identify needs for the community. There's a big hole. Not done. Recommend the bylaw revisions and documented levels of service revisions and implementation, and conducting comprehensive research and reporting all available funding sources. And then finally exploring P3s, which I'm not keen on. But so none of those things have been done yet. We were told they're all necessary to make a decision. And now we're being told, well, you don't need those things to make a decision, or most of them. It's confusing to me. This process seems to be awry. So I wanted to lay out, there are other options that we have not seen yet before we get talking about them. And some of them I think are quite viable.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Just hearing Councillor Gray go through a very long list, which is essentially a lot of reasons to not proceed, which have been probably thrown out for a decade or more now. I wish to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council endorse the preferred option, program layout new site option 1A, sheet 201, in the Johnson-Davidson Architecture Report, which is dated May 28th, 2025, to build a new fire hall on the adjacent site to the existing fire hall. And I can provide some more, but so moved.
Okay, so I wasn't actually ready to do the resolution because there was the planner's memorandum I would have liked to have reviewed.
Sorry. This discussion could go on forever. Councillor Gray has laid out, again, what might be, concerns, but that will take years possibly to resolve. So we have a motion on the table, which has been seconded.
Okay, so motion by Councillor Shukin and seconded by Councillor Epp. We will open it up for discussion. However, I would like to say that we're also, this room was stacked full of people last week with a lot of concerns, and these are things that we're trying to address some of those concerns. Cost being the biggest one. We have no idea of cost. We've had one option. I don't know, even sitting on the steering committee, where the option came from. It did not come from the steering committee. It showed up in an agenda package. Maybe it came from, I don't know if it came from the subcommittee. I don't know if it came from staff. I have no idea. There's not been, at the steering committee, there's been 2 meetings this year and not a lot of discussion on flushing out all of these details. In the last meeting, we couldn't even read the material. It was supposed to be this Wednesday, the 11th. So that's why I wanted to go through this systematically. Sorry it's taking so long, but listening to our public, I think was really critical. Not to dismiss all the comments or all the letters. People take a lot of time. It's a lot of passion, and not to create more division, but to bring it back together with some leadership. Okay, so it's open for discussion. Councillor Gray, you will have your hand up, and then we'll go back to Councillor Shukin.
Yeah, I just want to respond to Councillor Shukin. The list I read out are the deficiencies of the feasibility report that we commissioned and paid for. So it's not a list made out of the thin air. I'm saying we haven't got any of that back, and we were told we needed that information. And the information and the report was to be to us by October. So it's been plenty of time to get this done, and I realize you want to get on with it, but it's not like we haven't done our role. We approved it, we're paying for it, and we're not getting the goods. And I'm not trying to delay it, I'm just saying we should know that, so then we go to look at options, you're choosing options in a sense blindly. Maybe I have a question then for the mover of the motion. The architect said he would price he said it was fair to price two options. Are you not interested in that, Councillor Schumann, through the chair?
So one of the things I might mention about cost is that at this point, cost is going to be a guess if we're doing a Class D option. What is going to be the most substantive and material impact on this project is the potential of a grant. Now, and we can delay and we can do other studies, but if we don't get ourselves in a position to apply for that grant, we're missing out on potentially millions of dollars. Again, we can cost out other options and go solely by cost, but if we don't proceed expeditiously, we're going to miss out on potentially a big chunk of funds. Now, I hear what Councillor Gray has said about, the grant program may be eligible for, for the next 10 years. I have to look at that. But if you look at the sort of the pattern of where those things opened up, 2015, 2017, 2022, and now, that's a bit of odd timing. So I think we need to strike. I would recommend that we strike now. And again, Ms. Work, I thought, had probably the most compelling letter of the package here. And she notes, I think very accurately, where we're at. We are still in the feasibility stage. So we're not, again, announcing that we're proceeding to construction. We have to finish up the financial picture. And again, getting ourselves in a position where we can apply for that grant is again, the most significant aspect of financing this project. Sorry, I won't say is, it potentially could be.
The one comment I do have to that is the way this motion is written, and I know that people have written letters saying we're not bound to that particular option, but the way it is written, we are. So we could amend it by saying an option or whatever. I would prefer it to not be that we are, and then we're committed with that resolution that we can use it as an example if we want to send it in as an example. But I would not want our hands tied to that particular option.
So thank you very much. I recognize that, and I had misgivings when I initially saw this. The word that I actually find gives me comfort on the potential of this not going ahead is the word endorse. And again, the preferred option, sure. So again, we still have to get to that finance picture, but it is not a full-on commitment to building this option. So.
Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the comments. This is part of the feasibility process, so I think we should let it unfold. The consultant has identified a preferred option. It seems unusual to me that we would hire at great expense experts in the field and then completely disregard their advice. This is their preferred option, 1A. The consultant said the other night, maybe he could consider consulting out or costing out Class D estimates for two options, but he also added a caveat that any of the options would be plus or minus 5%. So I think we can guesstimate. The Class D estimates won't get us an actual precise costs. We would need to have conceptual drawings and much involvement with architects. That would be $150,000 to probably $250,000 for those, and I'd be unwilling to do that at this point. I think the letters do point out this is part of the process. We're not putting shovels in the ground right now. We're trying to move the process along. Let's try and get a good grant application. Let's give the CAO and the fire chief enough time to put together another package. At the same time, the feasibility, the Firehall Steering Committee continue along with the feasibility study and address some of the concerns that have been identified tonight. I think this is in part of the process, and please remember that we are elected to make bold decisions, good decisions for the greater community, and we have to do that sometimes with imperfect information. And I know how frustrating that can be at this table, but this is just the nature of the game. And I think we should proceed.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you. It might seem odd to put aside a consultant's report, but that was exactly the advice that we received when we started the process. Mr. Payette said, you do the feasibility study, and then you may not follow any of it. That was the reassurance provided at that time. So it's not odd or unusual. We've hired people to look at it. I've laid out a long list of things that have not been done. So it's not really what we had sought in the beginning. And in terms of bold decisions for the greater community, I guess that's where we differ a little bit in the sense of taking on debt is a big concern of mine. And I think a lot of people in our community. And I'm also, with this particular option, very concerned to lose the glue that holds our community together, which are these big events that are so special. We just went through the Metchosin Community Association garage sale. It's a very special event for people, and the parking lot was full. And Councillor Shukin knows he set up the parking. And I'm not sure what you folks are thinking is going to happen when the fire hall's sitting there. The footprints of the two locations, if you knock down the existing administration building and or the apparatus bay, it's a tiny space compared to the field out here that would be taken up for the entire operation. Can I just ask, I can move motions in that, but is there any appetite to put forward other options, or would those be picked at some other time when we might look at Lombard, for example, or we might look at design build, which would be done with no debt? Just putting it out there and finding out, is there someone who can work on this for us, and what price would they come in at? So seeing no interest in any other options, that's helpful to me to understand for the community. Thank you.
Mayor Little.
Yeah, I just want to touch on bold leadership, because bold leadership is planning for the future. And it involves calculated risks. It involves embracing uncertainty and inspiring others to act with courage. It's about being decisive, proactive, and willing to challenge the status quo. The status quo now is to push the fire hall to another council. We must be willing to challenge the status quo, but we should remain positive and resilient in the face of challenge. And that's what bold leadership is. I'm not afraid about that. Thank you.
May I ask Mayor Little what you mean by pushing this off to another council?
Sorry, say that again. What I said is the status quo is not to do anything about the fire hall, is to push the decision off to another council. That's what the status quo is. We don't want, I do not want to do that. I want to be decisive and support the feasibility process, the feasibility study, because we have invested in that, and we have made some kind of commitment that we are going to move forward in this.
Councillor Gray?
Yeah, just to say, that's all good. The question that I guess I'm posing here is, you folks, we asked someone to take a look at things, and he said, I got this way of doing it, and you guys are going to go into debt. then we said, well, can you look at the financing strategies, the way you might do it, take a look at our financial capacity. Earlier tonight, we went through it and said our financial capacity is not so great. We're short of money in a variety of places. We can't replace or take care of our current assets, our roads, our bridges, all that kind of stuff. So we're not in great shape here. We had another report on where would we get the tax money to run the district for a number of years. And I'm simply saying, in this instance, why would we not, the next couple of weeks, issue an RFP out there and say, we'll spend $6 million. What will you give us for that? We need that building torn down, the new building put up, and we need and as much as we can certify the apparatus bay and find out what we come up with. To say, well, we're not going to do that. We prefer going into debt. And I'm saying, boy, what? Like this building, people have been talking about the requirements of the building code. There are no requirements of the building code on that existing building. They don't have any. It was built, it exists. The one thing that we need to abide by right now is the fire code, but the building code not. And when they come back and they say, well, that outlet there on the wall has to be moved over 4 feet, lots of people in the house would say, I don't think we should do that. But what you guys are saying is we want to do it exactly as per the current building code in a 30-year-old building. As I pointed out the other night, there are no 30-year-old building fire halls being replaced simply for seismic upgrading. They're being changed for expansion, but nowhere else in the province. So it's not like we're boldly leading in a direction that is common anywhere else.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, perhaps we can get the fire chief to comment on this, but my understanding is that the BC Building Code now requires post-disaster standards for protective services building to ensure that they remain functional in case there is a major emergency. I don't think it's accurate to say that we don't have to build to BC Building Code. And certainly the BC Building Code is not going to get more relaxed over time. I suspect it will only get more stringent with greater surveillance on buildings used to house workers. Perhaps we can get the fire chief to comment on the BC Building Code as it relates to the fire hall.
Just before, what I'm referring to is the existing building does not need to meet post-disaster requirements. New builds, of course.
And I actually asked the consultant the other night how many building codes we would go through, and I believe the answer is there would be several. While it's standing, even in a new one, it's going to go through a few of those. We heard that earlier from somebody in public participation that Langford's already gone through a couple of those, and that's a fairly new build. That was early 2000s, so it will because the building code changes consistently. So the apparatus bay is already a different building code than obviously the administration, which is much, much older. It's the 50-year-old side, which we know is the more detriment part of the building. Okay, so we've got a motion before us, and it is to do with only one option and no costs and lacking a lot of information. So I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Opposed, Councillor Donaldson and Gray. Okay, I would like to, before we go on to the next one, please, to work through or at least look at and see if there are any concerns or questions about the planner's memorandum, ALR application options. I'm not sure if that comes up later or not.
Page 139.
That is, pardon me?
Page 139.
139, yes. Okay, so this was presented the other evening from Thursday evening from CAO Payette, briefly. And there was a couple of different ways to do this. There was the full exclusion, there was partial, and the different kinds of application, non-farm use, etc. Any comments? Councillor Shupin?
So my sense of this report is that Ms. Johnson put this together very quickly in order to meet some information needs that we had. So what's being asked in the motion before us is to bring forward a report. Yes, it does say seek authorization to proceed with one of the following, but this is a very cursory report, and I think we'll get a little bit more if we move on things. So I'm surprised it's in here given the tight timelines that she had to work with. So.
Well, I appreciate that she did because it was a critical component, obviously, and that's pretty clear with the amount of information she gave us. Councillor Gray?
I mean, the way I read it, bring forward a report that seeks authorization. Is that to us or bring forward a report to the ALC?
Councillor Donaldson?
Sorry. Yes?
Just to clarify, it is to bring forward a report to council.
Okay.
Thanks. It's great clarification. Because it still is entertaining the two options.
Okay. Councillor
Well, I'm going to move that Committee of the Whole recommend Council direct staff to bring forward a report that seeks authorization to proceed with one of the following formal application processes to the Agricultural Land Commission for 4450 Happy Valley Road. Would be to apply for a non-farm use for construction of a new fire hall on the parcel 4450 Happy Valley Road, or to apply to exclude 4450 Happy Valley Road from the Agricultural Land Reserve.
Just a point of clarification before someone seconds this. Could we have guidance from the Deputy Corporate Officer? Does the recommendation say one or the other, or is that the full resolution? Does the planner want us to choose either a non-farm use for construction or apply to exclude in entirety?
Through the chair, it is one or the other. So the planner is looking for council's guidance on which option they would want the staff report on. So it would be either to apply for a non-farm use or to apply to exclude 4450 Happy Valley Road from the ALR. So
okay, I will change the motion.
It would be one or the other.
Okay, I will move, take the option, apply to exclude 4450 Happy Valley Road from the Agricultural Land Reserve.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Epp and seconded by Councillor Shukin. Open for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Shukin.
Oh, Councillor.
Oh, Councillor Epp, you want to motivate?
I just gotta find the page again. Because according to the planner's report, we applied for the exclusion and the ALC doesn't agree with the exclusion, then it will revert to just from the, excuse me, the non-farm use. So it seems like the most reasonable way to go. I mean, to me, it would be very helpful to have all the property, this particular property, out of it, just because of things like the stalls for the Equestrian Society and other things that, you know, this is municipal property, and we have a lot of non-farm use buildings on it, and I think that's the best way to go.
Councillor Shukin?
I believe that there is a good rationale to exclude the entire property. I really am doubtful that there is going to be farming on this parcel of land. I will confess, though, I have some misgivings in terms of symbolic, you know, on a symbolic level, given the ALR's, you know, the significance it has to Metchosin. So to be honest with you, I'm sorry, I was under the understanding that this motion was to bring back a report further discussing both options. including process and timeline, because what's here is fine, but it's still kind of a cursory thing. Yeah, anxious to hear what others might think of this.
Well, as I recall in the report, that excluding was going to be costly. It's going to take a lot longer. The non-farm use leaves us open for a lot of options. Yes, I know it might seem onerous for some people to have to go through the ALC. It's only in recent years we've done it, and it's only been very small things like the cricket pitch or a small building put up. At least with the non-farm use, we can continue quicker possibly to the construction in the Firehall, whereas the exclusion, as she said, was going to take longer. The other concern I would have is taking the whole thing out is then if the property becomes available to do all sorts of things like affordable housing or what have you. Right now, it's not that, and with the non-farm use, it still is a little bit more restrictive. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm going to oppose the motion. I think that we just passed an agricultural plan that said we're going to preserve agricultural land, and to me, this is agricultural land that should be preserved. I understand its use these days, but the future is a long way away. I think it has a special value here, the way that it is. I'm also concerned of what Councillor Shukin's calling a symbolic situation. For the district to remove land from the ALRs is an interesting question to be raised, and I wonder about the precedent and where it goes. And I talked the other day about the identity of Metchosin, and agriculture is part of it. We heard from a few people wrote in and said, take it out. This is the village core after all. But I guess they didn't read the village core definition. It includes agricultural land. And fundamentally, it's part of the center of Metchosin. And you guys, I recused from the meeting, but you passed that change not so long ago in the OCP. And then finally, I'll make my last plea. This land is so important to the community, and to not consider that. And I just for the parking use, in fact, and for all the entire time we've all been here. That land has been used on these very special occasions where the community comes together. And we lost the parking over in what's called the Kiwanis Field. We need something if we're actually going to have big meetings of people. If we're not, that's a tremendous loss to the community.
I'd like to just add to that, as it is my portfolio, the agriculture. Maybe it brings it together, but this is something that was sent to me. Regarding the ALR land. The preservation of ALR land remains the top priority, especially given the food security concerns on Vancouver Island. The land adjacent to the current building, which is the Firehall as we know it, the land is not contaminated or unusable. It is a viable option for future agricultural use, whether it's growing or whatever. In the interim, it can support light seasonal use, such as the intermittent parking during the summer events, passive recreational opportunities, which we see year-round, that promote the health and wellness of our residents. And that kind of struck a chord as well. The bike park is in there, and that shows up in several of the options as if we were to extend on that building site to have, well, as one of the options, to have a more conclusive building that meets all the needs that we still have yet to cover off. But the ALR is not just about growing food, it is about land in reserve for future use of agriculture, whatever that looks like. And we heard that from Mr. Powell earlier. Agriculture comes in many forms, whether it's greenhouses or livestock or a food hub, whatever. So any further discussion on the motion? Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also interested in preserving agricultural land, but agricultural land within the ALR that's used for agriculture, not used for parking, not used for events or recreation, used for agriculture. I wish I knew which way to go in terms of either applying for the non-farm use or applying for the exclusion. I haven't got enough information in terms of timelines or which process will be the most successful. We don't know that. Unfortunately, you can't have those conversations with the ALC. For each of these, you have to make an application. And so I will be in favor of applying for the exclusion to remove the 4450 Happy Valley Road from the ALR.
Councillor Shukin?
Yeah, thank you. And I am going to vote for this motion. What we are asking for is a report on one of the options, which is the exclusion. If we find that this information comes back and it's not what we like, we can maybe head down a different road. I do recognize it is the most significant of the two options before us, but I think it's worth having the planner have a look at. So a deeper look.
Any other discussion? Councillor Gray, your lights
I'm just
on.
going to reiterate to say I'm in favor of the no debt option and the no removing from the ALR option.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion as Councillor F has presented? And opposed? 2 opposed. Councillor Gray and Councillor Donaldson. Okay, so we can move on to Councillor's update, page 141.
Councillor Donaldson?
Yes?
Any chance that we could take a 5-minute recess break?
Yes, of course.
And could I also make, before we do that,
yes,
could I move that the council vote to extend the meeting beyond 10 o'clock?
Yeah. Moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Councillor M. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Recess and extension. Yeah, no, good idea. Appreciate that. Okay, welcome back. Let's finish up.
Councillor Johnson, can I just ask a question about the motion that just passed to understand?
Yes.
Are we, by passing that motion now, we're going to get a bunch of work done on the preferred option from the consultant. And I know that the preferred option does not have any housing attached to it. And then the other night we heard from the steering committee chair that, well, housing may still come. Where would the housing, with the preferred option, where would the housing be, or is that, should that be put aside at this point? I mean, you guys have studied the option and want it, so there's no housing in it. Is it time now to put the housing issue aside?
This is not something we've even discussed at the steering committee, so I've not met with the consultant. The subcommittee did, and the CAO and the fire chief, and I think we asked the consultant on the Monday when he was here at the mic, and kind of got the impression it was off the books too, but I don't have a complete answer for that.
Yeah, I mean, that it seems to me that by proceeding here, at least this far, the notion was at one point that housing would pay for this or help pay for it. But if there's no housing in it, then it can't do that. And so I'm kind of at a point where I would like to see us tell people they don't need to keep looking at that option, or that if we go with this option.
Councillor Shukin.
My sense is that where we're at in terms of the process, where we can go until September, is housing is essentially off the table. That I just think that is the reality of things. So maybe something will change, but I'm betting that we have enough work to do from here to September to just focus on the buildings that are essential to the project.
So with that, maybe I'll move that the committee of the whole recommend to council that Firehall planning no longer consider a housing component.
To make it official, do we have a seconder? Because it is in the RFP.
I'll explain it if you like, if someone a second.
A second for discussion.
Well, what I'm concerned about is that the, as Councillor Shukin says, if we want to shoot for the September grant opportunity, the complications of this are quite, I'll say, extreme. Just with the notion, I think we were built up, and it was supposed to be done a long time ago, because the first thing we were going to do, we were told from the CAO, was get the agreement signed with the Firefighter Society, then they would be managing the housing. We had to figure out who was going to pay the subsidy to pay for the housing once it was organized. And I remember the night that we did it, I have some notes from then, that the expectation was that the consultant would explain to us how the cost of operating subsidized housing and who would need to put in the subsidy and all of that kind of stuff. It seemed to me quite a complicated thing to get done, and will certainly slow us down. And I don't support the idea in its first instance.
Councillor.
I believe the consultant said when he was giving us the report that that the housing, I mean, it was being considered, but he said that the housing, because if it's involved in the building, the housing also has to be of post-disaster standards, and that it would be at a much greater cost for the fire hall to have housing added to it, and that also was, was difficult with the large span of where the apparatus bay is and different things. It just sounded like it wasn't really on the table as far as housing. I mean, he said we could, possibly put housing somewhere else, which I guess we could do at any time if a council is so inclined. But I don't think that from his perspective that it was going to be on the table anymore. That was my perception anyway.
Mayor Little.
It is certainly up to the Firehall Steering Committee if they want to bring it back and add that suggestion. I seem to recall that they did have a discussion and they heard at this table significant concerns. And Councillor Gray, you were the major opponent to discussing and talking about the housing, and I think they got the message that was probably not a good way to go. So I will leave this I would like to leave this up to the Firehall Steering Committee to discuss over the next few months if they want to bring that up, or if somebody else has find out more information on funding opportunities for those type of partnerships.
Councillor Gray, could you just read that motion one more time, please?
That the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the fire hall planning no longer consider a housing component.
Okay, any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed by Mayor Little. Oh, sorry, and Councillor. Okay. Okay, so now we'll move on to page 141, which is my update for as the chair of finance. Just quickly, for the agriculture portfolio, you'll see the farm to fork map, which Reimagine has worked with our agriculture committee and myself with the Metchosin Grown Society. It's out on the front desk. This map encompasses all of the West Shore communities. There's a lot of different businesses that are listed on it, as well as farms and roadside stands. It was all voluntary, so we didn't put all of them that were on our previous map. It was left to the individual places. Metchosin Grown Society, the community garden, they had their first plant sale. It was a great success for 2 hours on the Sunday of the garage sale. It was great fun. We had lots of donations, as well as we grew a lot of different things, or they did, I didn't. I just dug up stuff and donated it. You'll have seen the Rooted in Metchosin look at local agriculture that was in the tax notice. That was something I worked with staff. That was something we talked about doing a newsletter. We just put a briefing on agriculture and resources of where to find more information to go out to our residents. West Shore Parks and Recreation, lots of plans for fall planning for continued fitness at the school. Nothing finalized yet. We're still waiting on schedules and such. I do want to mention an announcement that came out is the pickleball grand opening. Pickleball courts grand opening is next Friday, Friday the 13th at 10 a.m. Open to the public. This is next to the tennis courts, or between tennis courts and the skate park. There's 6 state-of-the-art pickleball courts. There'll be casual and competitive play. The lower fencing around it is to help improve spectator viewing. And there will be expanded space. there is expanded space for picnics, and it is a reserved and a drop-in play option. So come out and have a look at those. They're pretty spectacular. Great time to have it now that the weather is wonderful. I'm sure that our growing numbers of pickleball people in Metchosin may now want to get out of the gym and go down there and check it out. They've got this new skill. Greater Victoria Public Library they're doing some rotating emergency preparedness training sessions with their staff. I did put that out on Facebook for those people who are on Facebook, just know which closures or which libraries will have some closures, because it is rotating and it's not to be affecting our patrons too much. Also, there's an AED being installed at the Central Branch, and we'll see other placements in other libraries as time goes on. Some extra things that I had the privilege of being involved with this past month. I was asked to be an alternate for the Greater Victoria Labour Relations Association, which is a public sector employer bargaining agency that leverages collective strength in labor relations, or negotiations rather, and this was representing West Shore Parks and Recreation as the alternate. CRD Water Board, also an alternate in Councillor Gray's absence. Was able to go to a CRD Water Board, my first CRD meeting actually. We're now at the water conservation level of 1, which is in effect, and we've received a very esteemed an award for the quality of our water throughout the GVRD, which was on the front page of the Times Column. So that was pretty spectacular. Okay, that's all I have. Moving on to Councillor update for community planning, page 143, Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. You mentioned the Broom Bash as well at the bottom of your thing. Thank you very much for participating, and to Mr. Donaldson as well. So okay, so my update is all about the invasive species policy, and you have a second draft with the objectives of the report. I definitely took advice. So with that, I want to thank a number of people. So Mr. Perrone was one of the first people to provide input. Andy McKinnon provided some really good input. Councillor Gray provided input. It was reviewed by MEASC and also sent to a number of other groups that are here right now. So again, just in summing up, the two significant things around the policy are to help mobilize and enable volunteers with invasive management, and to do so with the knowledge and cooperation of the district as well. And also to clarify use of herbicides on district land. And you'll see in the in my summary here about some of the filters that I used and applied when I was trying to move ahead with the policy and the comments. And so what I should have done here is actually provided a resolution, if you so chose to make it, to advance this, again, if you feel that is appropriate. And so what I might do without further ado is ask if there are any additional comments to the second draft. And sorry, in the package, I'll just let you know, have the clean version of version 2, and the marked up version of version 2, summary of the comments, and then a few selective examples of, not examples, but some of the comments that were passed on to me. I should mention that Jenny Eastman of the Capital Region Invasive Species Committee did provide a number of comments. I asked her if I could include those, and she asked me to hold off just because she mentioned they were pretty informal, but I did review all of them. So with that, I would turn it over to folks.
Was this, I think I read somewhere in your report that this was shared with all of the advisory committees, is that correct?
Oh, I sent it to the council liaisons. Actually, I probably missed Healthy Communities, I have to say, but yeah. But I think I sent it to you.
Yeah, I probably got it. I don't know if I sent it off to the, I don't think I did because we haven't met.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I was wondering, it's like, nobody commented.
guess,
Did
yeah.
they not get it? Or
No.
maybe I did, maybe I slipped.
Okay, no, I think it's a hard time for the Ag Committee to meet at this time of year, but yeah. I feel, yeah, so.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Councillor Shukin. I'm concerned about a number of parts of the document, and people, certainly the public can read my comments that I provided to you, and I hope that Council has read them. What I'm not sure is what problem is being fixed by the policy. So you mentioned two things, mobilizing volunteers and clarifying the use on district land. And so we have a system at the moment, and Council, appoints a councillor to be attending the CRISP meetings and being that liaison there. And the way things actually have been working since, I guess, Morley Milne's time, Andy McKinnon's time, and then I happen to move into the position, but any of us could do it, is that we're actually the link, and it has to do with your number one concern expressed here, which is that we're short of staff. And so I guess that's where this came from. So what we do is we kind of get a councillor involved because we don't have the staff, or the staff have got a lot to go on. And then we become familiar with it. And I'll just mention, I've got the notes here from the CRD and the CRISP group. And their point really is, how would we orient your CAO to know what to do in terms of approving or denying herbicide use? This is usually a senior environmental staff making the call, and herbicide is always the last option. So the way it works now is that, no, the CAO is not involved. In fact, this is the one sort of unusual area where someone on council, happens to be me, but it could be any of us, take the role. And then it's actually the CRD who provide us the senior environmental input. And it's not like, as written here, well, we maybe ask them. No, we ask them every time. They are the senior, that's who we've been using in this model that we currently have. And the suggestion is that we change that and have the CAO act independently about something that he hasn't been briefed on or knows about and doesn't have a contact person to speak to. We note here that, or again from the from CRISP group rather, training for staff with the pest application course is just a small part of what they could learn. Most people would take the course, feel they need more learning before actively using herbicides. Usually these are staff members who have a context of biology, ecosystem background, etc. So when I look at it, I think the problem that I have with the proposal here is that it's proposing a whole new way of doing the part that the district's involved in without commenting about the volunteers at all. So the notion now is that we spend about $1,000 a year on contract, roughly $400 one year, $1,000 the next, for the services of a contractor who's contracts for the CRD to deal with any herbicide application on public lands outside of what the volunteers do. And I'll come to that in a minute. So, and we only really apply pesticides or herbicides in one location or as a result of the black knapweed up at Tower Point. There's a concentration of knapweed there, so that's CRD's job. And they say, yeah, but it's going up in the roadside. So we go out and we take a look at it and say, yeah, that's knapweed, and let's get our contractor to do it, and our public works staff go, great. What day it'll be on, we'll be sure there to locate it. And then any other black knapweed that's been found, they deal with it for us. There's a Japanese knotweed plant that I think is dead now, and that's it. And the whole idea, I'm just worried about the unintended consequence of using a lot more herbicides without the link between us and some professionals who are doing this all the time. So that, when I look at this, you'll see in my notes, I say, maybe we could, at first I thought, well, the CAO, its operations, you guys mentioned that earlier. I guess the CAO, he wants to train our people up to do that. And that was the beginning of the disruption in the force field, basically. Like, why are we doing that? And I remember the mayor and Councillor Donaldson saying, why would we send our public works staff to spend time meeting with CRISP and doing all that. This seems like a wrong use of their time. I happen to agree with them, but I wanted to follow the operational direction of the CAO. Now they're meeting the policy. I'm saying, wait a minute. Why is our staff involved at all in applying pesticides? We don't need them. We're just doing a little bit of black knapweed away from the from Tower Point at the moment. Then if anybody spots another invasive and they report it into us, either to staff or through to CRISP, through the CRD, then we tackle it. And this happened just a few weeks ago where an individual in the public reported the sighting of shiny geranium to the CRD. They got in touch with me. I knew what to do. Quickly sent it to Jay the same day. He then contacted, is this PTAS job or is it Public Works? Because it's in a park, I wasn't sure. And within, I'd say, a week, it had all been removed by volunteers. Kathy Atherton led the charge, took it all out. Other people were involved. Katie Nelson and others, I'm not sure. It was all done and dealt with. And that's how it's working. So the idea of saying, well, let's change it all because it's working, doesn't appeal to me. I'd say it's working fine right now. We don't need to layer another job on our CAO in terms of the work here. There is, of course, a process at the point where they say, we're going to do this, we think we should do that. Then it does go up in the staff because there's money spent. So obviously there's an authorization given at the CAO level. So that part of the document, I kind of think, I don't see why we would change something that's working fine. I haven't heard any complaints. Nobody's mentioned a problem. The volunteer side, I get it. There's some problems there, and I think that part is worth looking at. But I wouldn't do the other changes simply for the concern of unintended consequence of more herbicides use.
Councillor Shu? I don't think there's anything in the policy that will change the level of effectiveness such as it exists right now. CRD can still spray for black knapweed or apply herbicides as they do. Landowners can be contacted if it's going to their yard. Volunteers can still work. So I don't think there's anything in terms of, again, the effectiveness that's occurring right now. What I will just point people back to is where this came from. And this came from I think there were 3 or 4 motions that Councillor Gray brought back from MEASC. And there was an attempt to, figure out where the CRISP priority list went. And there was also an attempt to come to be clear on how we use herbicides in Metchosin. And there really wasn't much clarity around that, other than we don't use it for cosmetic purposes. So that's where the origins of this come in. And I think that it's actually been spelled out pretty well, not simply by myself, I hold the pen, but from the input we've received from the likes of the Bilston Watershed Association, from MEASC, from PTASC, from MISC, who are here, from the people at this table, and all of us have had deep experience removing invasives. So again, just the origins, you should take that into consideration as we go ahead here.
And just to say, we didn't actually discuss the MEASC recommendations. Instead, you said you'd like to write a policy. So we never had that discussion. I wasn't aware of any problems. Nobody mentioned them. So the issue came up, as I recall, through the issue of should we treat blackberries on roadsides with herbicides. So a lot of discussion about it. We didn't discuss the MEASC recommendations. Instead, we went for a policy. I'm just saying I don't see the problem that we're fixing particularly. There wasn't a problem. If you could describe one, that'd be great to learn about.
So I want to just counter that. Sorry, I don't agree with that. We spent a lot of time, and Councillor Epp, I think mentioned that we'd spent 45 minutes at the committee level talking about those recommendations. So we talked about it quite a bit. But I did intervene with the idea of the policy and when it was at council. So here it is. But
Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the work that you've done on the policy. I think it's good. It's a good policy. It does outline particularly the use of herbicides, what our objective is. Nowhere do I see here that it promotes the use of herbicides. It does outline the role of volunteers, and we have had conversations with Neil West at the MISC with asking for permission to use herbicides on the boulevards with permission from the CAO. So I think this outlines how that they should consult with the CAO, and it also might get us an idea of how much herbicide is being used on public land. I think it's a good policy. And you do have a recommendation at the bottom of page 143.
So as you're meditating on this, the one thing that I would really like to see, and again, this is outside of the policy though, is those who are involved in invasive species management removal find a time to meet at least twice a year, and say in February, say in September, and we do a bit of understand what the priorities are for each group and do a bit of a plan. So for example, I was talking to my pod leader today and we were thinking, wouldn't it be great if we cut the broom in the first 5 meters of Laban Road, and coordinate that to be something that Farsmar can help us with. So again, it's not in the policy, but some of that thinking has come from the development of that policy. And I'm going to see if I can organize a meeting in September as that first shot, and then again in September with those folks. So.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, again, it's hard to read the document, the small print in some of it, but as regards the volunteers, presently I'm aware that the volunteer groups are involved largely in CRD properties. The CRD works with them, but there is some work done on holly and European ash, where there's a dab treatment of a pesticide called Garlon. And some of the input we got from CRISP is nowhere else the CRD volunteers are they involved in applying herbicides. And so be cautious about that, particularly as regards issues of liability. So there is, I don't see we'll see this matched elsewhere. My proposal was that we actually make it clear, if we're going to have a policy, that in Metchosin the volunteers will use, as they do, or my understanding is they use a contractor to do it who's qualified. So a paid person would then have the liability and all those other attachments. But that we put it to the European ash and the holly and stop it there. I don't see any reason why we would be, in terms of the overuse or extended use. The risk is all through the document, from my perspective, where you have the CEO approving at his discretion without any requirements to talk to anybody else about it. So it's kind of, as I read it, at his discretion, may ask somebody's opinion, all that sort of thing. So we're leaving it in a vague situation, and I don't believe it would be supported by the people in Metchosin.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, just to clarify, volunteers have not been applying herbicide to either holly or the European ash. That was done by a contractor. The European ash at Blinkhorn was, the treatment was applied. I can't remember the organization, but the chap's name was Don Hare. And so it was them that applied the herbicide. It was volunteers that were there, but they did not do the treatment.
And so, that, as I say, contractors do it, but the policy says that volunteers would do it. So that's why I'm raising the issue.
Councillor Gray's worry about, say we get a rogue CAO and who loves herbicide and can just apply it everywhere. That can happen right now. Like, there's nothing stopping. As I read the current policy, it's about cosmetic use. I don't think that stops that wouldn't necessarily stop somebody if they wanted to apply a herbicide. At least this puts some parameters around the potential use of herbicide. And the one thing I have to say is there's so little used. It basically is the examples, at present, the examples Councillor Gray raised. we might look at, on official basis, the use of Garlon. And again, I checked with the crisp lead, Jenny Eastman. It is something that is used, maybe by contractors only, but it is used, and apparently it's been proven to be very effective, as we heard Misk speak to as well. So,
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, so I'm just, again, offering that it wouldn't happen now because council has appointed a councillor to be on CRISP, and I have a role to be maneuvering around those things. So I don't think the staff would ignore the council appointment and the liaison work that I'm doing. Can I ask then, in the policy, that I guess it's the next question, what is the role, why would we have a councillor appointed to CRISP any longer? To do what? Because there's no, I don't see that in here, any role for that person, whether it's you or me or Councillor Epp. There's no role for the councillor in working with CRISP. Description of what the person does.
I think in the there is mention here. The appointed council representative will share information from CRISP. It doesn't necessarily identify bottom of 146. So it didn't like,
so it just send emails to people that you get it.
It's information sharing. If there's another, again, if there's another role that you're playing with CRISP, has that been documented anywhere?
No, I mean, I just joined CRISP like the other things,
Yeah.
and you guys appointed me to the role.
Yeah.
So I picked it up and done it and found out what the job is. I could certainly, I mean, I've described it in the column here, but what's the way I read it, and again, I'm not concerned about me. I'm not here forever. It matters not. What we've done is we've said that, I guess, in this circumstance, I would be attending it, but have nothing to do with the question of whether or not we were applying herbicides. So I don't know what I would do exactly, or why I would attend CRISP anymore. Anyway, maybe we can, either end that, put it in the policy that we don't have or put what the role is, write up what is the role of the CRISP council representative, or whether or not, maybe you could propose whether we should have that person or not.
I don't see a need to change anything at all.
So what, maybe I'm just saying you could describe the role. It's not, is it simply to receive emails from CRISP and send them to the people? I've just described what I do.
Yeah.
None of it's here. It's a new thing is taking that over now. And so it's confusing.
I don't think the policy necessarily needs to change or reflect a specific role. Roles like this, I mean, are really about what you make of them. Somebody will inhabit that role very actively, another maybe not. So, yeah.
Mayor Little, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that the primary role for the councillor, just like you at the West Shore Parks and Recreation, Councillor Epp with some of the arts organizations, is to hear the information, bring it back, preferably in a written format, so that all councillors at the table, all members of council are aware of what is happening in these organizations that we belong to. And that's the primary role. The role is not for the councillor to be the gatekeeper for herbicides within the community. The role mainly is for information sharing.
Thank you. Councillor Shukin, what is the next step?
Well, if it so please this committee, you could make a motion to move it to council for adoption. If there were specific amendments you wanted to make, direct me to do that. I don't know if a motion is needed for that. I think just giving me feedback. I'm with all due respect to Councillor Gray, I'm not convinced of that his input right at this moment needs to be put in here. I think it's covered. I think it's covered, or there's no effectiveness or anything that detracts from, again, the level of effectiveness that we're underway with now. Sorry.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, I support the policy. The only caveat is it seems like the Agricultural Committee wasn't able to comment on this, and it wasn't forwarded to the Healthy Community. So if either Councillor Epp or yourself would like those committees to see it, then perhaps we should send it to them, but I'll leave that up to the two of you.
I think that it would be a good idea. We just send it out through email if that's okay. The Agricultural Committee will not probably reconvene until the fall. So they will do it over email if everybody's okay with that and give some input. And they can do that directly to you as opposed to me being the go-between. So we could do that.
I think, excuse me, I think we're, you know, we'll probably pass. I think it's something that we probably wouldn't do at the Healthy Communities.
Okay, that'd be great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Gray.
And for information, again, it's, you'll read it if you read the small print. CRISP is currently revising the priority list of species with new description of the what was called control. I'll admit I had a hard time explaining that to people, or no people, the council table here had a hard time understanding it. I think the new language will be quite helpful in terms of what it means for priority species and what it means. Well, in fact, the word priority is not even used anymore. The whole classification will be very helpful to those who are interested in the issue of controlling. And that I suggested to Councillor Shukin that he actually wait until that is revised, because it may in fact change some of what's written in this document here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next councillor update, which is environment and natural areas, and verbal report from Councillor Gray, please.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Okay, we'll go on to Public Works Protective Services. Councillor Epp, your update, please.
I'm not going to go through it. It's so late. But I just wanted to say that I wasn't obviously focusing on the calendar, because I said that the 11th annual Parisian Cafe is set for this Saturday, which actually was last Saturday. And it was one of the first actually nice days I can ever remember that I've been involved. It was a beautiful day and very well organized, and a lot of people came and enjoyed chatting to each other, and just it was a really nice community event, and enjoyed by all.
Great. Thank you. And then, Mayor Little, sorry.
Through you to Councillor Epp, it's great that we received the provincial grant for the Vision Zero Road Safety Guard, the $11,000. That's so cute. Kudos to you for moving that forward. Do we have a timeline? Do you think it will be installed for the next school year?
Oh, I'm certainly hoping so.
Okay. Well, I
haven't double checked with the Public Works crew, but I'm sure that's, imagine that's the plan.
Okay, that's great. And then also the new accessible door at the school has been done, so that's great. And thanks for reporting back on that. And I agree, the Parisian Cafe was wonderful. We had an absolute wonderful day. It seemed at first there was more people that turned out for a rainy event in the beginning, but I think they got a number of people there, and it was a great gathering spot for the seniors and others. So thanks for that.
Councillor.
Thank you. Just one thing I forgot is that we are also getting 2 automatic defibrillators for the school.
Okay.
So which is going to be really good, especially with all those senior pickleball players.
So we never have to use it. Very little.
And will there be training associated with the defibrillators?
I'll check with the fire chief on that.
Yeah.
I think it's they are fairly self-explanatory, but it still wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
It might be something to incorporate into the pickleball group, because there's so many of them. Just somebody has them. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to correspondence from Kathy Atherton. There's correspondence here on gorse, another invasive species. Very, very prickly one. Hard to get rid of. Councillor Gray.
So I learned at CRISP that gorse is a noxious weed under the Weed Act. And in fact, this letter arrived, I think, the day after I heard about that. So I sent a note to Mr. Payette to explain that he might want to look at the Weeds Act and take action. And so I think he's aware of the correspondence and will well, we could make a motion, but to get moving on this, because that we can, through action of the district, require private landowners to remove gorse on their properties. I've sent a number of notes to the CEO about that. So maybe he could report back to us and tell us how do we proceed. Well, maybe I'll move that we refer this letter to the CAO in order that he may provide us a report on next steps.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Shukin. Any further discussion?
I don't know if we need to do this, but I would maybe ask for a verbal report. Could we make that a just slight modification?
It doesn't take much to write on a piece of paper what you might do.
Well, there's a couple of suggestions here as well, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
You know, even an article in the Muse so everybody realizes. Yeah.
So maybe I could clarify. I mean, I think this is an important issue. We just gone through looking at a policy saying this is like vital kind of thing to control invasives. I don't think it's anything wrong with a note to tell us what the next steps would be.
Okay, so get a motion, right?
Yeah, I second. It's fine. Yeah.
Councillor.
I just think it's getting into pretty murky water to try to force private landowners to do something on their property. I mean, I agree it's obviously noxious, but so are a lot of other things. And I don't know how that would be policed or monitored at all. It's just a comment.
It may not, but the awareness is important. I know when we were doing the bufferland pool, we actually had this discussion as one of the neighbors lives up Neil Road where it's just riddling the side of the road, has for years and years. And she was identifying the fact that, you know, she doesn't really like doing it because, you know, it's not comfortable to do, but that it is there. It doesn't go away. But anyways, we're aware of it.
There's a whole provincial legislative framework for this because of the issues that Councillor Shukin's laid out, the danger of invasives in this particular noxious weed. So it's really our responsibility to do it under the provincial legislation if we have the problem. Invasives need to be controlled. Our CEO is the one who would do that in accordance with our policies and certainly on municipal lands and policing our volunteers. So I think it would be the right person to get back to us about getting on this. I think Kathy Atherton's provided this. We have another note from another resident also concerned about gorse and the fire hazards.
Councillor Shukin.
As much as I'd like to see gorse removed, I am very leery of compelling landowners to do that, if only because of the mechanics of actually making that happen and enforcing. That's a challenging one, and there are other bylaw issues I think that staff and our CEO would be better focused on. So, I mean, it would be great to get the report, but I think, again, getting the community involved, getting the awareness, and even offering to pull the gorse or take it on. I was speaking to Kathy Atherton, and we were struggling with gorse in particular, though, and she mentioned that gorse does require a different level of commitment. And that's, I think, a great way of saying it. But I still think it's going to be really challenging for the district to enforce that. So anyways, it'd be great to hear from Mr. Payette, but still challenges lay ahead.
Okay, any further discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, opposed by Mayor Little and Councillor App. Okay, and then the last thing was the pinks as correspondence. So I appreciate, we had pinks last week. I'm not sure we had it in the agenda, but nevertheless, appreciate the effort that people put into putting pen to paper and sharing their passion and concerns with us on how things operate in our community. So with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Shukin and seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.